state. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAfm, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Just keep your eyes open for a stationary vehicle middle lane as you go between Rigel Avenue and the R21 interchange. Other side of the province, the Mike 1 this morning, quite heavy through
Indeed, Cabinet has approved plans that will see the private sector becoming more involved in the energy and logistics sector. On energy, Cabinet has approved the Integrated Resource Plan, or IRP. This plan sets out how the government plans to procure more energy, and from 2030 to 2050, the IRP sees the government procuring more energy from private sector players. The IRP will be released soon for public comment. And in the logistics sector, the government has also approved the Freight Logistics Roadmap. This plan proposes that private sector players become involved in the running of the rail network and port terminals currently operated by Transnet. It is a significant move to reverse the dysfunction of the logistics network.
And then Discovery says the NHI in the current form will actually backfire.
Yeah, Discovery CEO Adrian Gore is worried about the NHI bill. He says the NHI bill in its current form will diminish the funds available for healthcare and frustrate the private sector. The NHI bill was passed by the National Council of Provinces last week. Gore is particularly worried about Section 33 of the NHI bill. This section says once NHI is fully implemented, medical schemes will only be allowed to cover health services that are not provided by the NHI. Gore says this would
low because they were saying compared to the previous elections, they had a fell with 6 points from 41% of the voter turnout. And at the same time, as we said, the conflict in the Middle East, the issues of governance, corruption, arrest of opposition has been one of the concerns that has been going on in Cairo for this election. So we'll wait and see what will come out from Cairo beginning from tomorrow as the election results will be trickling in.
In Sudan, the warring military parties, we've been trying, obviously hoping for peace there. African mediation efforts, they're not working.
They're not throwing a cold water on them, Stephen. And this is from IGAD. Remember, IGAD has been working with the United States and Saudi Arabia to mediate to end this conflict, which has killed more than 12,000 people, have pushed to 6.5 million people outside Khartoum. Now, both General Abdullah Fattah al-Burhan and Hamdan Dagalo, they have refused even to meet. There was this tension that they will meet, but it seems the Rapid Support Force, they don't want to meet him as the head of the state. They want to meet at different levels. So others are saying that they are undermining the efforts of African mediation. So it seems Sudan will still be back on the woods in terms of resolving this conflict that has erupted since the beginning of April.
Sure. And then ECOWAS has set up a committee to negotiate with the military government in Niger about going back to civilian rule.
Stephen, remember that coup, 26 July coup of Niger, led by General Chiani. It has been on the table of ECOWAS to engage. They met in Abuja this past weekend, and when they came out, one of the issues from the Commissioner for Peace and Security was that we need to engage with the government of Niger to say, how do we return to the civilian rule? Because one of the major challenges in all these military coups is that when are you bringing back the civilian rule? Because even if you have a military rule, you need to have a relation between the military and the civilian. The same like Sudan, we had the same arrangement during the time of Hamdok. But now we're having the same challenge that in Niger, that you still have a military rule, and ECOWAS is pushing, despite its sanctions, Stevens, that are not working, that we see now that the Sahel, they are forming a federation against ECOWAS, and at the same time, you want to have a military intervention. So I think they are opting for what we call diplomacy now of engaging with Niger.
And then in Kenya, gosh, another national power blackout.
Stephen, it's almost for 3 months now. Over the weekend, Kenya, what they called their Ministry of Transport, not energy, Stephen, they are saying it's a possible act of sabotage and a cover-up for Nairobi as a capital city to be going in the dark for the past 3 months. And others are saying, how do you restore power in a country that since the 25th of August until now, Stephen, you've been having challenges in the major capital city of Kenya. And this also is a lesson to us, Stephen, from West Africa. Abuja, Lagos have been having the same challenge from the Southern Africa. South Africa have been having the challenges of load shedding. Now we see East Africa, Kenya, facing the same challenge, and it also bear a brand to the local businesses how to manage their economy when they are struggling with power.
And then in our archives, we're staying in Kenya, 12th of December 1963.
Stephen, nothing to celebrate. Even today is their independence when they were liberated from Britain. 60 years down the line, 6 decades since 12 December 1963, when Mzee Jomo Kenyatta became the first prime minister on this day. And that's where the role of the Danke Mati, the Mau Mau, also was influential in the rise of this independence of Kenya from the 40s until the 60s. Like I said, Stephen, today is the Independence Day, but nothing to celebrate without power in Nairobi, Kenya, the land of the Danke Mati, the land of Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, now under the hustler, William Ruto. Asante sana SG, as we are still leading the conversation, SAfm observing the Reconciliation Month.
Ras Advocate Sipho Mantulip, thank you so much. Back tomorrow, more news from our continent through the day.
Stephen Grootes on SAfm.
Good to hear it from you as always this morning. 086 000 2032 in Zimbabwe. The main opposition there, the Citizens Coalition for Change, says it will now challenge the results of 9 by-elections held over the weekend. They were won by ZANU-PF members, and that could now give ZANU-PF the votes, or a supermajority in Parliament, to change the country's constitution. So what happened, as I understand it, is there were elections in Zimbabwe earlier this year. After that, a person called Sengezo Chabangu, who's never belonged to the Triple C, wrote a letter to Parliament claiming that he was the interim Secretary General of the Triple C and that some of these MPs were not members of the party. Now, the country's parliament then removed those members and ordered by-elections, which were won by the ZANU-PF candidates. But this person who wrote the letter never actually belonged to the Triple C. Very strange story. Promise Mkhwanazi is the spokesperson for the Citizens Coalition for Change in Zimbabwe. Promise, good morning.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. As I understand it, a person claimed to be your interim Secretary General. He wrote this letter. He said your MPs were not formally members. You were then forced to have these by-elections. How would you describe what happened here?
Well, it's quite bizarre what happened in Zimbabwe, because this is a random person, a willing tool to the ruling ZANU-PF party that was used to recall unlawfully our members of parliament who had been elected in August this year. Barely 2 months down the line, they were recalled by this person, and by-elections were called in which they were not allowed to contest. So what you see there is basically that the objective is for Mr. Mnangagwa to attain two-thirds majority using any means, any means to get those two-thirds majority. Why? In order to amend certain sections of the Constitution, foremost of which is the section that limits presidential term limits to 2 only. And Mr. Mnangagwa aspires to continue beyond the two terms. And secondly, I am told that they also want to change a section on dual citizenship in order to guarantee that Zimbabweans outside the country have no chance at all at voting.
Did you challenge this in court?
There's been several challenges that we put before the courts, challenging Mr. Chabang's authority, challenging his authority, challenging the recalls, challenging everything that he has done. And for your own information, the courts have become brazenly biased in favor of Mr. Chabang, including passing a judgment at the heart of the night on the eve of the election. And what is curious there is that during the August elections, one presidential candidate wanted to withdraw his candidature, and he was told that he needed 21 days notice after the nomination court to do so. But this time around, the candidates were removed barely hours after the judgment.
It's an amazing story. Do you have any other options? Is there anything else you can do to stop this from happening? It's very difficult for you, I know.
It is a very difficult and complex situation, but we are determined to stop Mr. Mnangagwa. We believe that multi-party democracy, the rule of law and constitutionalism are non-negotiable cardinal pillars of our democracy in Zimbabwe, and we are weighing our options as we speak. Today, we've got a historic Citizens National Assembly meeting that will be conducted this morning to take hard decisions in terms of the options available to us, including, but not limited to, peaceful protests, total withdrawal of all our elected members of parliament, and an escalation in terms of the diplomatic offensive. All those are options that are before the Citizens National Assembly today, and we'll see what decisions will be taken.
Promise, thank you very much indeed. Promise Mkhwanazi is the spokesperson for the Citizens Coalition for Change in Zimbabwe. As you know, of course, all sorts of questions there around ZANU-PF. ZANU-PF denies wrongdoing, but you'll know of the claims that have been made there in the past. 7:15.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Major on the line from Springs. Major, hi. This court ruling about King Misizulu Kazwelithini.
Yes, thanks. Great work from you and your team.
Thank you, Major. Go for it.
Look, I don't want to go into the nitty-gritties of what transpired yesterday, but I just want to say at a symbolic level, the judgment seems to confirm that Africans are indeed a conquered nation. And it's high time that we must submit and admit, if Roman Dutch law can entertain issues of another institutions of law, the African customary law, that the accession of kings and queens can be adjudicated by the Roman Dutch law. They have now become experts on the institution of African customary law. Then it's high time that must take our backs and head for the hills as Africans and submit that we are indeed conquered.
So, well, Major, I mean, it's not so much Roman Dutch law as around the Constitution and how all of that works. And there's a body of traditional law, but then in the end, constitutional rights sort of reign supreme, because that was the idea. We were all part of the negotiation, was the idea. But you clearly don't feel that that's what happened. You clearly feel very, very strongly that something else happened.
Yes, that's why I don't want to venture into the nitty-gritties of it, therefore. But what symbolizes at the national level is that another set of rules of law have the power to adjudicate on African traditional law, on ways and means and norms and traditions on how accession was adjudicated no longer matters. What matters is the Roman Dutch law. That's what I'm saying.
Does it matter that the people who challenged it also come from the Zulu royal family?
Well, it matters. We're conquered. It matters. So we will look for solutions everywhere because we're conquered. There were ways and ways that we used to resolve those issues. But why have we abdicated them? Simply because we're conquered. We have to admit. That's why I said we must admit and submit.
Sure. All right.
And forget the way we used to do things. And then let the Roman. Well, I don't want to venture into the issue of race,
sure.
But come. Sorry?
Right. Don't worry, Major. I can hear your frustration. Thank you, Major, on the line from Springs. A very interesting and perhaps very important view on that issue. 12 minutes to 7.
SAfm values your views. Be an active citizen.
Well, all of the miners who were kept underground over the weekend at the Gold One mine in Modder East have now come to the surface, several in hospital. The NUM has claimed some miners were assaulted underground. There are various claims here. The union AMCU is accused of holding 400 miners underground against their will because the mine wanted to dismiss workers involved in the hostage drama in October. In that case, workers were also kept underground against their will. The mine then wanted to fire the workers who had held their colleagues hostage, but the union AMCU denied its members have held anyone hostage, simply saying workers stayed underground as a sit-in protest. Ziad Hassam is the head of legal at Gold One. Ziad, good morning to you and thank you for your time. Firstly, I understand some of the miners who are underground were assaulted over the weekend. Is that true?
Hi, good morning. Yes, unfortunately, that is true. There were several instances of assault, particularly over Sunday. Those matters have all been referred to the police, and we are also conducting an internal investigation, and there'll be internal disciplinary proceedings on all of those matters.
Do you believe then the people who were underground this weekend were being kept as hostages? Is that your view?
So as it was in the first instance, I suppose it depends on your perspective in terms of how you would characterize it. Certainly for those supposedly in solidarity with their colleagues who'd been dismissed following the first incident, they would characterize that as a sit-in and a demonstration of some sort of show of support. But there's also a group of people who have certainly been held against their will. And as far as those people are concerned, there's no doubt that it's a hostage situation. Minister Grootes as well as the SAPS have gone on record classifying this as a hostage situation, and we're treating it as such as well.
Okay, so then what happened this last weekend, the start of it was when you tried to act against the people who were involved in the hostage situation last time. What are you going to do now?
We've made it clear that, to both the NUM as well as AMCU, that anybody who's dissatisfied with the outcome of a disciplinary process may refer the matter to an internal appeal. They may also take the matter to the CCMA. But holding a sit-in and keeping other employees hostage is not going to force us to change our approach to dealing with misconduct, certainly in terms of our code of conduct. And so we'll conduct a thorough investigation again into the cause of this incident, but where appropriate and where necessary, we will once again institute disciplinary action.
Okay, so I mean, if you aren't able to do anything, if the police don't do anything, you're going to have some miners who maybe try and take hostages again. You're going to have other miners who resist that. You're going to have a real conflict underground, Ziad. I mean, you're obviously very aware of that.
We are aware, and I think this has become something of a worrying trend within the sector in the last few months. And between ourselves, the NUM, AMCU, as well as the DMR, we need to find lasting solutions to make sure that this doesn't become the norm every time an employee or a group of employees are dissatisfied with something that happens at a management level.
Ziad Hassam, thank you, Head of Legal at Gold One. Do appreciate the time. You were there, SAfm. It's 8 minutes to 7.
SAfm, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Joburg traffic first up. Mike 1 from Boyson's moving through the Crown is now sort of extending a delay right through to about the Empire Road exit. Some pressure around the Kempton Park area, Modderfontein Road, through the Modderfontein area is busy. And the roadworks on Zeefontein, just south of the Modderfontein Road junction, continue to backlog traffic. Chris Harney leaving Soweto, quite a queue passing the Barra Hospital area today. Southern parts of KZN, Port Shepstone through to Islington. It's the Harding Port Shepstone Road, still being disrupted by another night of protesting. It's between sort of Murchison and Islington paddock area. That's where the protesting is, and there is some traffic being disrupted still in that area. Durban crashed on the N2 North out to Spaghetti Junction is being cleared, but it's left an early queue as you run through to the roadworks just north of the interchange. Higginson Highway out towards Havenside and Mobeni, leaving Chatsworth looking quite slow. Cape Town, second day of roadwork disruption and delays on Marine Drive. Very slow through Milnerton. The restriction there, same as yesterday, left lane closed at Loxton Road, the Woodbridge Island area. And some load shedding around Boortessuck, Summer Greens and Montague Gardens. It means fairly heavy pressure out of Edgemead on Edgemead Drive up to Bosmansdam Road over the N7 and down towards the Montague Drive area. Rob Byrne, SAfm Traffic.
Gautrain is for the legends who make moves to save and pay from as little as 40 Rand from Sandton to Rhodesfield. It's for the bozzers who switch off the geyser when no one's home. And for our clever who get that there's food at home means exactly that. So when it comes to travel, make moves that save and pay from as little as 40 Rand from Sandton to Rhodesfield Station. Gautrain, for people on the move.
Manchester United ladies and Liverpool ladies will never sleep well at night until they reach the summit. They refuse to share points as they are both interested in victory. This is the FA Women's Super League. Who will have a great day during the festive season on the field of play? Catch Manchester United ladies up against Liverpool ladies on Sunday, 17 December at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag we love it here. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
At SAfm Radio and at Stephen Grootes on Twitter.
5 minutes to 7, the High Court in Gauteng now ordering that President Cyril Ramaphosa was wrong to formally recognize King Misizulu Zwelithini as the king of the AmaZulu people and said he must create a group of experts to investigate who should be king. The ruling does not say King Misizulu is not the king. It just says the way in which Ramaphosa formally recognized him was wrong. In other words, it's about the process and not the outcome. Professor Musa Kulu is a cultural expert. He's also the founder of the Ndonsa Yesizwe Zulu Kingdom think tank. Professor Kulu, good morning, and thank you for your time.
Good morning. It's a beautiful Tuesday.
So there'll now be a process led by experts to examine the claims to be king. Could someone else now be recognized as king rather than King Misizulu? Is that now possible?
Yeah, no, it is possible. I think Prince Magade and Misizulu are at 50-50 at the moment. It has always been so. It looked like, with the benefit of hindsight, not only were those meetings that were called in 2021 questionable, but also a lot of the royal houses were excluded from participation, which may mean that the way I look at it, it may be necessary for the process to start at the Zulu royal household family so that the process is then complied with according to customs. So there was a little bit of jumping off the gun with President Ramaphosa, because even at the time when he made the recognition, as it comes out now, the disputes were there, and he relied on Judge Madondo's ruling on a matter that was not before Judge Madondo. So, yeah, it's understandable. It was basically expected to happen in this way, and possibly, but it's going to be an uphill.
Was it the fault of the president? Was he supposed to? Let me put this another way. So, as I understand it, the president waits for the Zulu royal house to sort of make a decision. He then looks at the decision. Is he supposed to interrogate? Is he supposed to ask questions about it, or is he just supposed to accept it?
No, what happened was that at that time, the president referred the matter when it first came to the then Minister of Culture, who then appointed a panel led by the former Premier, Willis Mtono. The panel came to a conclusion that there were disputes and the process of recognition should be delayed until those disputes were settled. That recommendation was not taken into account by the president.
Okay. Did Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, I mean, he seemed, I mean, I'm in Joburg, I'm very far away from it, Professor, but he seemed to be playing a key role in all of this. Was he responsible for what's happened now?
Well, he wanted to, I think at the time he thought that if we could move quickly to get the next king, that would avoid disputes. But then, of course, now with the benefit of hindsight, maybe the process should have been slowed down, because as I say, the two candidates have legitimate claims to the throne, and it should have been discussed in those meetings of the Zulu royal family and minuted as outcomes of the meetings. It wasn't.
It would be incredibly. I mean, there was the process, there was the presidential recognition, there was the coronation as well. Big event. Government was there. I mean, it's very embarrassing to have to do that again if it turns out that that the wrong person was crowned.
No, unfortunately, it would be very embarrassing. But it's also a lesson, because Stephen, you should remember that it's not only among Amazulu kingship that there are these disputes. These disputes are all over, among the Bavenda, in the Eastern Cape, and so on. It's a highly contested territory because maybe of the perks that it comes up with in terms of remuneration, etc. And therefore, it needs a thorough process. The 2019 Act is very clear about the processes that need to be followed. And if those processes are not followed, irrespective of whether the person then nominated is legitimate or not, there will always be a reference saying that it should be, maybe it should have been done differently.
Are you worried this is going to lead to frustration in the kingdom, could lead to tension in the family?
It will. Look, the Zulu royal family is a highly divided family. And so there were jubilations, I suppose, yesterday, and there are also disappointments. I don't know what's going to happen today, but maybe one should say that they should learn to come down and make sure that, because the ball will ultimately be in their court, that a leader emerges who can bring them together to discuss these issues thoroughly without rushing. Otherwise, it's going to take a long, long time to settle this matter.
Professor, thank you. Professor Musa Kulu is the think tank, the founder of the think tank Idonsa Yesizwe Zulu Kingdom, and a cultural expert. You with SAfm leading the conversation at 7 o'clock. Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 38462. Now that's good news.
Independent and impartial. This is SAfm News.
Thank you, Stephen. In your top stories, Petro SA confirms deal with Russian SOE, and South Africa mourns the passing of celebrated songstress Zahara. This is SAfm News. A very good morning. I am Luyanda Maume. Petro SA has confirmed the appointment of Russia's Gazprom Bank as the preferred strategic partner for the 3.7 billion rand deal to restart the gas-to-liquids refinery in Mossel Bay. The fuel refinery was closed in 2020 due to the depletion of offshore gas feedstocks. Acting Petro SA CEO Sandile Ncemane says the resumption of operations at the refinery will restore security of supply of petroleum products following the closure of several refineries over the past couple of years, which made South Africa reliant on imports. Ncemane addressed the media in Sandton in the north of Johannesburg.
Petro SA welcomes Cabinet's decision announced this morning, which regards to support Petro SA working with Gazprom Africa to reinstate Petro SA's liquids refinery capacity as it enables Petro SA to move forward. The optimum size for the Petro SA liquids refinery capacity has to be complementary to the existing refineries in meeting the demand of the Western Cape, Northern Cape, Eastern Cape, and to ensure that it improves the return on investment.
Gauteng has emerged as one of the provinces which failed to pay invoices for services provided within the stipulated 30 days. The Public Service Commission says the late and non-payment of suppliers remains a serious problem, which needs to be addressed by the government. The Commission's quarterly report revealed that government owes service providers 11.1 billion rand, with Gauteng recording the highest number of invoices paid after 30 days. Spokesperson for the Gauteng Premier, Sizwe Pamla, has disputed the figures.
The figures quoted there are not the figures that the provincial government currently has. The outstanding invoices from the provincial government amount to 1 billion rand 64 million. And 99% of those invoices belong to the Department of Health, which means all the other departments are complying. 13 of them, they are paying within 30 days and they don't have any outstanding invoices. The reason why the Department of Health is the one that is a culprit is carries the biggest budget in the province. That's number one. Number two, it's been struggling with a lot of litigation.
The IFP says they've noted the High Court in Pretoria's ruling that President Cyril Ramaphosa's recognition of King Misuzulu kaZwelithini as AmaZulu monarch is unlawful and invalid. In his ruling, Judge Norman Davis says the judgment is not about who should be king of the AmaZulu. Judge Davis said the court was asked to determine whether King Misuzulu kaZwelithini had been appointed as king in terms of the Zulu customs. The judge said the second question was whether the president had correctly recognized the king in terms of the traditional and Khoisan Leadership Act. IFP spokesperson Mkhuleko Hlengwa.
We have noted the judgment of the court, and it is a matter for the royal family now to deal with, and we hope that they will be able to respond to it in earnest to provide the necessary stability, and we will accept whatever outcome of that process is concerned. So for us, really, it's a matter for the royal family and His Majesty the King to see how they take it forward.
A close friend of multi-award-winning musician Zahara has expressed his shock and sadness after the passing of the songstress. The Loliwe hitmaker, whose real name is Bulelwa Mkutukana, died at a Johannesburg hospital last night. TK Goldfish says Zahara loved playing her guitar and had a good sense of humor.
If anyone knows Zahara and is very close with her, at any time, anywhere when you're with Zahara, she'd just jam. She'd fetch her guitar and she'd just jam and sing for you. So those are my memories, mostly that I remember with her. She had a sense of humor. You'd always laugh when you're around Zahara and you'd always be singing. So those are the memories I have and that I will keep with me.
And finally, the United Nations General Assembly will later today meet where a draft resolution demanding immediate ceasefire in Gaza is expected to be put to a vote. This follows the failure of the Security Council to pass a similar resolution last Friday after the United States used its veto to block the measure while the UK abstained. The failure in the Council came despite the Secretary General Antonio Guterres invoking Article 99 of the UN Charter, a rare move that sought to pressure the Council to act given the catastrophic humanitarian situation unfolding in the enclave. Sherwin Bryce-Peace reports that the number of countries supporting the text could send a clear message on where the world stands on the devastating conflict. Recapping your top story, PetroSA has confirmed the appointment of Russia's Gazprom Bank as the preferred strategic partner for the 3.7 billion rand deal to restart the gas-to-liquid refinery in Mossel Bay. For SAfm News, I am Luyanda Maume. Headlines at 7:30.
Luyanda, thank you. Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 38462 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out. Is balancing your income statement harder than finding a spot on a popular Durban beach over December? Outsurance is so confident that they can beat your car insurance premium that you can ask them for 500 Rand if they can't. That's a monthly saving on your current premium or 500 Rand cash. Claim free and with the same insurer for 3 years, ask for 1,500 Rand. SMS out to 38462 for a quote. That's out to 38462. Outsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's apply.
A very good morning to you in your SAfm sports headlines. It's cricket. The Proteas hoping rain will stay away when they take on India in the second T20 taking place at St. George's Park in Gqeberha today. We also have tennis news. Rafa Nadal will be in a showdown with Carlos Alcaraz. All the details coming up just before 7:30.
SAfm, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Pretoria first up. There's just been a crash on the M1 heading north. It's just up by Atterbury Road. A couple of lanes are closed, and there is some queuing pressure from the Garsfontein Road already. Into Pretoria from the North, Paul Kruger's the busiest of the three. Eskia Petheli, a little bit of traffic at Putco. Paul Kruger through Capital Park's heavy. Steve Biko, Jan Haynes through Gazina, nice and clear. If you're wondering about route options in from the north this morning, Paul Kruger's the one to be avoiding. Durban's N2, backlogging still through the Spaghetti Junction area up to the roadworks at the M13. The backlog now almost back as far as the cement factory. There was an earlier crash on the N2 near Westwood Mall, which has been clear, but it's sort of back traffic up, and it does look a bit worse than normal. Cape Town, some load shedding around the Boertesak, Summer Greens and Montague Gardens area. So Edgemead Drive up to Bosmansdam Road through to Montague Drive. That's all very heavy. And roadworks again with us today. The left lane closed on Marine Drive inbound at Woodbridge Island. Very slow passing the Milnerton High School area. And just getting this in, the N1 into town, all queued up through Marine Drive, Woodstock onto the elevated freeway. That's some heavy traffic early this Tuesday morning. Rob Byrne, SAfm Traffic.
SAfm Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
8 minutes after 7, good morning, Tuesday morning, the last working Tuesday of the year. You're with SAfm Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. We'll focus on this PetroSA deal and what's really changing there. It's with a big Russian company. There have been some questions raised around that by the Amabungani Centre for Investigative Journalism. We'll hear their concerns, and we'll hear from the Chief Operating Officer of PetroSA as well. All of that to come. There will also, in the next little while, your mediated conversations around the idea of a judiciary. Should it be what's called united and independent? In other words, magistrates at the moment formally come under the Justice Ministry. You can imagine some of the issues that can come up there, so we'll talk about that in the next little while. Also, of course, other conversations around the post office. You know, they want to lay off 6,000 workers. I didn't know this. They only employ around 11,500. So they'll be laying off, retrenching more than half of their workers. How can you run it then if so many workers go? Well, we'll speak to the business rescue practitioner about that as well. All of that to come. Good morning. It's 9 after 7.
First in the morning, SAfm Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
10 minutes after 7 now. Well, yesterday, Cabinet confirming it had authorized PetroSA to enter into a deal with the Russian institution Gazprom Bank, which is part of the Russian gas giant Gazprom, to restart the gas-to-fuel refinery at Mossel Bay. Under the deal, Gazprom Bank will invest around 3.7 billion rand into the refinery to get it going again, and I presume also provide the gas to produce liquid fuels. However, Gazprom Bank is currently under Western sanctions because of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The Amabungani Centre for Investigative Journalism has claimed the criteria for the deal were tweaked to ensure that 19 other bidders for the project were disqualified. You'll hear the claims that Amabungani are making first, and then PetroSA's Chief Operating Officer, Sasako Magadla, will respond. We start then with Susan Comrie, the journalist from Amabungani who first published these questions. Susan, good morning and thanks for your time.
Hi, Stephen.
Firstly, in your reporting, you say that the criteria was tweaked. That meant that Gazprom Bank were the only bidder who qualified for this deal. From what you know, how did that happen?
Well, I think it's important just to say we're not saying, that the criteria was set and then changed. Rather, it's a case of what we know happened from internal PetroSA documents is that Gazprom Bank made an unsolicited bid to PetroSA. This was before the tender was written, and PetroSA then writes a tender. It has quite unusual technical criteria. It has an 80% threshold, which is quite high. Which essentially means that if you don't meet 80% of the technical criteria, your bid gets thrown out, gets eliminated. Now, from what we know from those internal PetroSA documents, 19 out of the 20 bidders don't make it. And lo and behold, Gazprom Bank, whose bid, as you remember, came in before PetroSA had even written the tender, theirs is the only qualifying bid. Now, that certainly raises red flags for us. It was something that we asked Cabinet about yesterday to say, did this not raise a red flag for you? Did you not question this? And it was really interesting to see Minister Ntshabeni kind of ducking from confirming whether they even knew that detail.
Is it possible then that other companies, other state-owned companies around the world would have been able to fulfill this project? They could have done the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as we know, there were 20 bids. Obviously, not all of those are going to be serious competitive bids. But we do know, for instance, that SOCAR, which is the state oil company of Azerbaijan, they had shown interest in the deal. We know that China's CMEC had shown interest in this. We also know that there were a number of private companies, private consortiums that had been put together. And from the scoring that we've seen, the sort of second and third place were private companies, and then fourth and fifth was the bids from the state-owned companies. So there certainly were other companies that had put forward bids on this project. Obviously the sort of appeal of potentially looking at one of those other companies is they don't come with the sanctions that Gazprom Bank comes with.
Okay, I want to come to that. How severe are these sanctions? I mean, would they have an impact? The sanctions that are currently imposed on Gazprom Bank, would they have an impact on South Africa at all if this deal goes ahead?
So it's an interesting question. Currently, the sanctions that are in place, and PetroSA got a legal opinion around this, to answer this exact question. Currently, the sanctions that are in place are primary sanctions. So it means that they apply, it's US and UK sanctions, but they apply to US and UK citizens and US and UK companies. Currently, there aren't any secondary sanctions which would reach out and penalize South Africa for transacting with those same Russian individuals, same Russian companies. That's not to say that there aren't consequences for that. You'll know that we're, trying to hold on to our AGOA status, which is a massive economic benefit for companies throughout South Africa who export products to the US. And, the sort of decision to partner with Russia's Gazprom Bank potentially has impacts on that arrangement. It also potentially has impacts directly for PetroSA, who does day-to-day business with other international oil and gas companies, which may have an issue with PetroSA now entering into a partnership with Gazprom Bank.
As I understand your reporting, at one point the board of PetroSA were a bit worried about this deal.
That's certainly our understanding, that, the evaluation, tenders went through the evaluation process. And when the results were presented to say, well, look, there's only one bid that actually qualifies, that within PetroSA, there were discussions to say, look, let's rather look at the top 6 bids. Let's rather, look at the top 3 bids. Or let's rather look at, the bids that are only coming from state-owned companies. So there were certainly attempts to try to tweak that evaluation criteria to say, can we actually, look at other players, because we know the risk that comes with Gazprom Bank. Part of the problem that PetroSA ran into is that they had essentially written themselves into a corner with the rules of the tender. One of the other legal opinions that they went out and got from a law firm in Pretoria said, look, you actually can't start saying you're going to negotiate with second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth placed bidders because they didn't reach your technical evaluation criteria. your choices are essentially you can go ahead with Gazprom Bank, or, and this is what the law firm recommended, start from scratch. Let's rewrite this tender. Let's do it differently. PetroSA didn't want to do that. Instead, they seem to have gone ahead with just pursuing the option with Gazprom Bank.
Okay, and the gas that would come into this refinery, would Gazprom Bank source that gas? Would that be Russian gas, I would presume?
So it's an interesting question. Essentially, part of restarting the refinery is that it fits into this bigger kind of puzzle about kickstarting a gas industry in South Africa. The idea would be that eventually the refinery would be fed with offshore gas, so indigenous South African gas, coming from either PetroSA's own blocks, offshore blocks, or coming from Total's offshore gas discovery, if that goes ahead. Now that's going to take some time, though, and so in the interim, there is a question about where that's coming from. One of the qualifying criteria was that bidders had to come from major oil and gas producing nations, or had to have proven access to feedstock of oil and gas. And our understanding is that certainly in the interim, in the first few years, you're going to have Russia supplying, it may be gas condensate rather than natural gas, but they would certainly be supplying that feedstock. Where that comes from, what price that comes in at, that's sort of questions that we would love to know the answers to.
Susan Comrie, thank you, from the Amabungani Centre for Investigative Journalism. You're with SAfm, 17 minutes after 7 the time. Well, let's hear from PetroSA themselves now. Sasako Magadla is the Chief Operating Officer of PetroSA. Sasako, good morning, and thank you for your time this morning.
Good morning.
So with all of this going on around Gazprom Bank, why have you chosen them as the partner for this deal?
I think I'd like to put things into perspective. One is that this is Gazprom Bank Africa, and Gazprom Bank Africa is not listed in OFAC, and there are quite a number of criteria that needs to be met for OFAC. So this entity is not the entity that is listed. I think maybe what throws people off is the name Gazprom Bank.
But isn't Gazprom Bank
yes,
Africa a subsidiary of Gazprom Bank?
It is, but there are a lot of complexities in terms of how the sanctions applied, and that is quite clearly stated. We've evaluated the risk, and they meet the criteria that was issued by PetroSA, and we've evaluated the risk. We've also consulted also with DERCO to give us advice. And South Africa, having chosen a non-aligned position, DERCO had advised us that we can proceed with diplomatic trade because they've chosen South Africa is a non-aligned, has chosen a non-aligned position. So, and clearly stated by the previous speaker, this is primary sanctions. This is not primary sanctions, which are only compulsory to US citizens as well as UK citizens. While though those are primary sanctions, there are exemptions to the sanctions. And the exemptions to the sanctions are energy security, of which US and UK continue to trade when it comes to critical energy security. And this is energy. So this project is around energy, and it falls around the exemptions. So if US and UK can exempt themselves to be able to utilize Russian gas and Russian oil and Russian petroleum products coming from all the other intermediaries that are in Turkey, China, and India. So what is different from South Africa?
When you spoke, okay.
Yes.
When you spoke to DERCO, did you just say, we would like to do a deal with these people, can we? Or did they encourage you in any way? Did they have any influence over the actual decision to go for Gazprom Bank in the first place?
I think it's important that the media respects the different processes. When state-owned entities do not follow their own processes, it becomes a minefield of litigation. Now that you follow the process and the process gives a front runner, that front runner, there is no reason not to award, having evaluated the risk and come to a conclusion that that risk is low at this stage.
I'm going to come.
And it can be mitigated. So why would you then violate the same process? And I think what is important, for public to understand is that PetroSA in Mossel Bay cannot continue to stay idle. There is more than 1,400 jobs that are going to be affected.
Sure. I understand all of that, and I'm going to come to that, but that's not the question I asked. The question I asked, I'm afraid, was whether you just said to DIRCO, we would like to use this company. Is that a problem? Yes or no? Or whether DIRCO tried to influence your decision. What I'm trying to get to is, did PetroSA...
DIRCO does not influence PetroSA's processes. PetroSA's processes are independent.
Okay, that's what I wanted.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. Who decided on the technical specifications for the deal? Was it an internal team? Was it experts in PetroSA who said, these are the technical specifications the bidder needs to meet?
That is a PetroSA process. I do not understand why am I explaining that process, and that was advertised with the bid. If you had taken time maybe to do some research, you would have seen that the bid was quite clear in terms of the criteria that will be used to assess the bidders. Everyone was aware of what the multi-dimensional criteria that was going to be used.
What I'm trying to get to is how 19 bidders, so how 20 bidders can be involved in a process. And these are people who all seem to be experienced in this. They all have capability in doing something. It is a technical process, I accept that. But then only one of them qualifies. So to put it, let me put it sort of very straight so that you can respond in a straight way. Were the criteria tweaked so that only Gazprom Bank Africa qualified?
No, we did not tweak that criteria. That criteria was clear and fair for everyone to meet. That's it.
So it just so happened that 19 of the 20 bidders were then disqualified. That was just the result of a perfectly neutral process, in your view?
It's just unfortunate.
Okay. The gas that will be used, now obviously the idea, and I'm sure you agree with Susan Comrie, the idea is, and what we all want if we're going to have a gas industry, is that that gas would come from South Africa. Indigenous gas, I think, is the phrase that is used. But that will take some time to happen. In the meantime, Gazprom Bank Africa has to have a supply of gas that can go into the refinery. Is that gas going to come from Russia?
I think you don't understand what work is going to happen, and you also don't understand your current sea conditions. The sea conditions at PetroSA make it extremely difficult to be able to park even an FSRU and discharge into PetroSA facilities. So otherwise you're going to have a lot of downtime, and that will be an expense that we cannot afford. We've run the section of the refinery with liquids, which is condensate as well as light crude. And that is the section that we are restarting with Gazprom Bank.
So is Gazprom Bank expected to supply gas in any way?
That is not in the scope right now.
But will they in the future?
I cannot speak about the future. I don't have a crystal ball.
Okay, so sorry, let me rephrase it so that I explain myself clearly. So what you're suggesting then is that in the current bid, that the agreement that was announced yesterday by Cabinet, or formally agreed to by Cabinet on Friday, there's nothing about where the supply of gas comes from.
That's correct.
Thank you very much indeed for answering my questions, ma'am. I do appreciate the time. Sisako Magadla is the Chief Operating Officer of PetroSA.
Culinary tales bold and true. That connects with joy, meal, and mood. Dijo le Bophelo, a show for sustenance of mind and heart, where food and choice and harmony flow. Catch Dijo le Bophelo and find your glow only on SABC2. Brought to you by SABC Education, enriching minds, enriching lives.
You see, Change happens, and it improves our lives. Change is good. It opens doors to new horizons and leads to a more informed tomorrow. Being in the know is no longer for the selected few. Information is for all of us to enjoy, whenever, wherever. Sunday World, putting the latest stories, sports results, exclusive video content, and celebrity news at your fingertips. To stay informed, download the Sunday World app today. Available on the App Store and Google Play. Sunday is just the start.
The Special Investigating Unit continues to intensify the fight against corruption, maladministration and malfeasance by conducting investigations in the affairs of government departments, municipalities and state-owned entities with integrity and professionalism. SIU investigators do not ask for money from people who are subjects of investigations. Do not be a victim of bogus investigators claiming to be from the SIU. This message is brought to you by Special Investigating Unit, striking against corruption.
The argument of who will lift the Carling Knockout Cup will be concluded by the referee's final whistle. Stellenbosch FC and TS Galaxy FC tackles each other for the big prize at the Moses Mabhida Stadium. Who will prevail in eThekwini? Stellies or the Rockets? Catch the Carling Knockout Cup final between Stellenbosch FC and TS Galaxy FC on Saturday 16th December at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. #We love it here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
This is SAfm Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. It's the T20.
Yes, the Proteas back in action. They'll take on India. That's at Gqeberha, looking excited whether it's rain or shine. The second T20, 5 p.m. First ball will be bowled. Now, after the first match of the T20 bilateral series against the Proteas were washed out without a toss, the team will be ready to take on the Indian cricket side for the second T20 at St. George's Park in Gqeberha. With only 4 matches remaining in the series, both teams will be looking for an early lead, with Aiden Markran captaining the South African side. Staying with rugby and cricket, the World Lions resume their 4-day campaign. That's in Durban when they take on the Dolphins. The Lions have a strong title ambitions of their own, even though the defeats to the Warriors at St. George's Park last weekend saw the team slip down the log a bit after being on top. But the Pride are just 16.5 points adrift and against the first-place Warriors. The team is bolstered by the availability of Protea stars Kagiso Rabada and Themba Bavuma, who are playing 4-day cricket in the national cause, getting in some valuable preparations before the test series against India. Some soccer news. Banyana coach Desiree Ellis won the Women's Coach of the Year at the CAF Awards in Marrakesh, Morocco last night. Ellis steering Banyana to become the Women's Africa Cup of Nations champions. That was in July 2022, and the first South African national senior team to reach the group stages of the World Cup in Australasia this year. Nigeria and Napoli's Victor Osimhen won the Men's Player of the Year. Morocco coach Walid Regragui, he steered Morocco to the first African World Cup semi-finalist in Qatar, was the winner of the Men's Coach of the Year. While the reigning African champions, Mamelodi Sundowns, were crowned the best club of the continent at the awards last night. Elsewhere, manager Erik ten Hag says Manchester United can beat any opponent, as they need to beat Bayern Munich to reach the Champions League last 16. United must win tonight's game and hope Copenhagen draw with Galatasaray in order to progress from Group A.
What I know is I never think in a negative scenario. I think we think positive. So we know what to do. We have to win to stay in Europe. So it's all about that. So we will prepare the team with that feeling and with that belief that we are able to do it. And I think we have shown in the last weeks when we are on our best, and then we can do it.
And finally, tennis. Rafa Nadal will face Carlos Alcaraz in a match in Las Vegas on the 3rd of March. The 22-time Grand Slam winner Nadal will meet Spanish compatriot and world number 2 Alcaraz, and that's at the Mandalay Bay Resort. The fixture will be part of Nadal's return to the courts after missing almost a year with injury. More sport on Sunrise. Headlines, top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. The post office, we've talked to the business rescue practitioner there in the next half hour. It's stage 2 now, stage 3 later. You with SAfm, leading the conversation, 7:30.
Thank you, Stephen. In your headlines, PetroSA has confirmed the appointment of Russia's Gazprom Bank as their preferred strategic partner for the 3.7 billion rand deal to restart the gas-to-liquids refinery in Mossel Bay. The fuel refinery was closed in 2020 due to the depletion of offshore gas feedstocks. And a group of concerned parents and residents is expected to picket outside the Soshanguve Magistrates Court in the north of Pretoria today when the case of 3 men who allegedly sold cookies laced with dagga to learners resumes. Amukelani Nyulungu, Ufenze Maluleke and Katlego Matlala, whose bail application has been denied, are facing 43 counts of attempted murder. And the presidency of the UN Climate Summit in Dubai is preparing a further final agreement after an earlier draft was condemned for stopping short of calling for a phase-out of fossil fuels. All 198 countries at the summit must agree or there's no deal. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAfm, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
This collision seen on the M1 North at Atterbury, causing a big backlog through Pretoria this morning. A couple of lanes are closed and traffic heading north is backlogging through Rigel and back towards the R21. That's a very heavy queue on the N1 running north. Also the N4, the Emily Highway. You're going to sit in some traffic this morning from Vartameyer Street through towards the N1 Highway. A little bit of an operation underway there. Joburg's N1 North, a crash involving a pedestrian before Buccleuch. So coming through from Sunning Hill, that all backlogs. In fact, that traffic almost back to the main road bridge just north of the four-ways off-ramp, so looking heavy. Durban, the N2 running north, very slow this morning. Traffic almost back to the cement factory. It's a lot worse than normal as you come up through the Spaghetti Junction into the M13 roadworks. So N2 north under pressure. Also coming out of Pinetown, you've got a combination of the roadworks on the M13 at N3 Paradise Valley and then a breakdown further up by Pavilion. So that's very heavy. M13, N3 Durban down, and a lost load incident on the N2 around Queen Nundy Drive, and that's causing a delay north and southbound this morning. Cape Town pretty heavily backed up for this time of year. You've got a crash on the elevated freeway near Walter Sisulu. That's right at the end of the freeway, so that's heavy. Load shedding in the Montague Gardens, Summer Greens and Boatesak areas, so real heavy pressure on Bosmansdam Road coming across the N7 into Montague Drive. Behind that, the N7 queues worse than normal. Backlogs from Four Trekker Road in the Goodwood area all the way up to that Bosmansdam exit. The R300 looking quite slow as well today from Delft, queuing and slow go right through to Old Powell Road in the Brackenfell area. Rob Byrne, SAfm Traffic.
The business update on SAfm.
Ray Machlaka, good morning again. Asian markets, US markets, how are they looking?
Well, both markets are up in the current trading session. Investors are anticipating consumer inflation data in the US that will be released later today. This data for November will inform the US Central Bank's decision on interest rates on Wednesday, and investors are optimistic about a cut in interest rates from March next year. So US markets were up yesterday, and before US market officially opens later today, the futures market is up. Nasdaq, Dow Jones and S&P futures are each up 0.1%. In Asian markets, Hong Kong's Hang Seng is up 0.8%, Japan's Nikkei is up 0.2%, and China's Shanghai Composite is also up 0.1%. And our market, the JSE, was up 0.1% yesterday. The biggest share gainers of the day were mining companies.
And the Santam CEO says the hijacking of expensive cars, it's on the rise.
Yeah, Santam is South Africa's largest short-term insurer, and Santam has warned that the insurance industry is dealing with an increase in hijackings and theft of high-value vehicles. Santam says it is seeing a shift from the theft of older and low-value vehicles with limited security requirements, criminals are now targeting more expensive vehicles such as double cabs and SUVs, and Santam is seeing more insurance claims arising from the theft and hijacking of more expensive vehicles.
We'll speak to the post office in a moment, but they're going to stop the cash payout of social grants.
Yeah, social grant recipients will no longer be able to use the post office for cash withdrawals of grants as of January next year, since taking over the payment of social grants in 2018, post office branches have been handling a physical cash, and this has made post office branches targets of robberies and financial misappropriation. Social grant beneficiaries will now have to use their SASSA grant cards to withdraw money. This card works like a bank card and can be used to draw money at retailers or ATMs.
Ray McClark, thank you, Ray, of course, back with us. Tomorrow, more business news through the day here on SAfm.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Joseph on the line from East London. Joseph, hi. You heard the Chief Operating Officer of Petro SA.
Yes, Stephen, good morning. Hey, Stephen, you are 100 times better than I can ever hope to be at being calm in the midst of rubbish.
Oh, Joseph.
Like, I promise you, this is so disgusting. The arrogance of these cadres that are deployed in the critical institutions, it's so much snowballed. I don't think there's any more arrogance that they can display.
Yeah.
I feel that we have to come as a country, and I'm not really going to you know what to give her the honor that she doesn't deserve and speak a lot about what she's saying. Anybody who has anything between their ears will know this morning that ANC is busy stealing the heart and soul of the country and really gorging everything out of it. These guys have sold us. These guys don't even care. And their arrogance to come on the national radio platform like this and literally extend a middle finger to South Africans. When you ask a question and she says you don't understand, you don't ask those questions for yourself. You ask those questions for me who doesn't understand. And her help is to respond to that. But then it tells you again, Uguti, we have this cadre deployment has rubbished the country, and it's high time that South Africans actually stand up, because this actually is a reflection on us that we can actually have more than ridiculous patience for nonsense.
All
and
right.
I want to say categorically, this was a nonsensic response even for her to come on the platform and begin to do that rubbish that she did.
All right,
Thank you.
Joseph on the line from East London. Very strong views there, Joseph, and I can hear you're upset. Rachel in Gqeberha, hi, good morning. How do you feel about it?
Morning, Stephen. I'm okay. Trust you're well. You know, I don't have much knowledge on the topic, and but like your previous caller, Joseph, said, you don't have to have much. That lady, with her arrogance, trying to sort of like, with your questioning, become. I don't understand her, but you can smell the thievery. You can smell the corruption. You can smell the malfeasance, like you said. It just stank of these people stealing again and again and again from us.
Right.
She just annoyed me so much. I had to call him. I don't know anything about gas or anything like that, but I could just pick up that this woman was angry with you in a way, but she couldn't really push you on air. But because of your questioning was spot on. You know, you were trying to get out of her, but she was ducking and diving because there is guilt involved there. There's so much corruption. It is unbelievable.
All right, Rachel, thank you. On the line from Gqeberha. And let me just make a point before we move on. Jory, we'll hear from you in a moment. But both Rachel and Joseph have sort of used the word corruption. There's no evidence that I've seen of any sort of corruption in this deal. Nothing from the Amabungani reporting or anything like that. You heard from them earlier. So I understand the context in which this happens, and you'll have heard me say many times, it's a cynical time in a cynical country, and after state capture, we understand that. But just to say, journalistically, I think it's important to say this, there's been no hint or example or any sort of evidence of corruption in this case. That doesn't mean that we can't ask questions about the deal. All right, that's it. Majoral in Ladybrand. Hello, Majoral.
Hey, how are you, Stephen?
I'm well. Go for it.
I want to take first on the issue of Amabungani's comment on the data.
Yeah.
They've lost credibility. They failed to investigate the rent manipulation because maybe somehow they know people who are involved. They are coming. They've lost.
That all happened before 2013.
No,
hey,
it doesn't matter when. It doesn't matter when. If it happens 2 weeks, if it happens.
It's all on the record in court documents in New York and in other places.
Crime is crime. It doesn't matter when it happens. Crime is crime.
I don't think Amabungani can investigate anything. But anyway, continue your point.
Yes, they've lost credibility. The second one, we know that some of you who you stand on when it comes to Russia. We know your stand. You're in favor of the West. We know your stand. That is why you're questioning deliberately would want to find anything wrong with any deal that has to do with Russia. With us, those who benefited from Russia, it doesn't matter how, whether you presume to be corrupt or what. We know the benefit of Russia. We are serious today because of the Russian role that is played during apartheid. It doesn't matter how. So whatever you people come and say with a muffin brain, come and talk and try to undermine the CEO and think that it's corruption. We don't just keep whatever it takes. For as long as Petro SA would be back and function as well, and come next year, we'll all be voting for the ANC, all of us. Thank you.
Okay, Majoral and Ladybrand, thank you. A different view. Temba and Aliwell, do you agree with Majoral?
I agree with Majoro 100%. First thing, Stephen, when you use arrogant manners to interview a person, arrogance is what you get from that person.
When was I arrogant, Temba? What mistake did I make?
Your questioning was very arrogant. You were very light when you asked your colleague from Daily Maverick. But when you ask,
she's at Amabungani, but she's not my colleague. But anyway,
yes, Amabungani. But the COO, you were very hard on her. Thirdly, the lady from Amabungani is talking from hearsay.
Well, she says she has the documents.
No, but that might be leaked document that has nothing to do with the deal. She has a hearsay. The COO is speaking from the point of authority, meaning she knows what has happened. Fourthly, Stephen, in your case, as the media, you drive a particular narrative. You would have preferred a US-based or EU-based company to be part of this thing. So South Africa has relations with Russia or Russian companies. Whatever that US has done has nothing to do with us. Fourthly, you were agreeing with the person that was saying a lady is a cadre deployed. How do you know that she's a cadre?
I didn't agree.
No,
I did allow her to say it, but that doesn't mean that I agree, Timber.
But listen to the recording. When she was talking about the ANC, you were saying yeah. When you say yeah, you say yes. You agree. You didn't hear yourself.
It also means that I understand what you're saying. But anyway, continue. I'll let you finish.
Yes. The last point that I'm saying is that if you choose a particular narrative, arrogance is what's going to come back to you. Thank you very much. Have a nice day, Feda.
All right, Temba, thank you. And Ali, very frustrated there, I can hear. MJ and Kleberger, which way do you go?
Good morning, Stephen. I would have to agree with the previous caller right now. He's on point with it. I think the problem was the way how you had framed the conversation with the interview with the Amabungane lady. So what happens is that when she came on, yes, she was arrogant in her answers, but it's the way how you had framed all of your questions and how you had set up the interview.
Well, I did it deliberately so that you would have a chance to respond, so that nothing would be left unsaid. And it was my idea, and I take responsibility for it. But I thought if someone's making accusations, then the person who the accusations are made against must have a chance to respond.
I see, and she came off as arrogant, but I don't understand why the first two callers were saying she's corrupt. That's what I couldn't understand.
Well, as I said, there's no evidence of corruption in this deal, but I think people are talking about where we are rather than that specific thing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and I think the frustrations with some of us listeners is the way how you also just didn't correct them, or you just allowed them to later on and just would have just at least helped and say, no, there is no corruption over here. She's not a kid and all of those things. But
Well, I don't. Well, MJ,
yeah, Stephen,
if I were to say that, I guarantee
arrogant.
you get calls the other way. So that's the way it goes. that's my job. So.
Okay, but
Right.
no, thanks. I think the people have a problem that it's a Russian company. I guess if it was an American company, no one else would have a problem.
Look, I think
But
the fact
thanks.
that it's a Russian company is absolutely an element of this, but it's not the entire thing. If there was an American company and the technical specifications were changed, and suddenly 19 of the 20 bidders didn't qualify, I think people would ask questions.
No, thank you very much.
All right, MJ and Gqeberha, thank you. Look, there are lots of different directions you can go. 086 000 2032, a quarter to 8.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAfm, let's talk.
You'll have heard of the reaction to the plan by the business rescue practitioners at the post office to retrench 6,000 workers in a bid to save the institution. Earlier this year, the post office was put into provisional liquidation. Now the business rescue practitioners want to retrench more than half its workforce and close down 420 branches of the post office. Anush Ruplal is a business rescue practitioner at the SA Post Office. Anush, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to your listeners.
As I understand it, the post office only employs around 11,000 people. Why do you want to retrench 6,000 of them?
Stephen, our business rescue plan firstly was adopted by a majority of creditors at our meeting last week. So what this effectively allows us to do is to implement the turnaround. And in that regard, it is really around cost savings. The post office, unfortunately, has a very bloated cost structure. And unfortunately, whilst it is difficult, no one would like to see job losses, etc. This is necessary. However, we don't view it that way. Upon liquidation, all jobs would be lost. And in a business rescue, we view it as saving more than 5,000 jobs approximately.
Would it really be able to provide a proper service with 5,000 people?
Yes, so if you look at the further cost-cutting containment and the optimization of the organization, we are reducing the branch footprint to 600 branches, looking at various other cost-cutting initiatives, cash conservation. And we've applied ourselves by doing various detailed analysis around where the market is, what is the footprint that the post office can operate with, and what would optimize the business.
So I just want to understand this, Anush. I'm no expert on the post office, but you'd end up with 600 branches and around 5,000 people to operate them, okay? But then don't you also need people to actually deliver the mail, which is still delivered? So then are you really going to have enough workers left?
We believe so. If we look at some of the duplications and overlaps in operations over the years, I think as far back as maybe 5-10 years ago, there were approximately over 1,800 branches, and that's gradually been reducing. And I think what that's done is allowed just to be for an overlay or a duplication of resources. We're also looking at modernizing the post office, automating various aspects of it, and of course when one applies market matrix or ratios according to the staff to revenue number as an example, this is where we end up in terms of the analysis.
So would the post office really be something that you have in a city but you don't have in a small town?
No. So what's important about the post office, it is not purely a profit-generating motive. It is a public entity. It has a social mandate. And what that means is that we have to have, branches in the rural areas. And this is a huge part of what the plan is premised on, and in terms of what the branch network would look like. So we've got to have presence in the rural areas where ordinary South Africans, may not get up to instant Wi-Fi, may not be able to switch on a smartphone or a tablet to get connectivity or to communicate. So effectively, that's what that's what the plan looks to balance out in the bigger scheme of things. However, our plan is not just a 1-year plan; it is a 2 to 5 year strategy. That doesn't mean that we reduce to 600 branches and we stay constant. Obviously, as the organization turns around and it's able to generate more revenues, the plan, it would allow for the post office to expand the branch network in future.
Okay, so then the role of the post office in our society in the 21st century, what would it actually do? Now, in some countries, the post office there will still deliver parcels. Here, it seems to me, courier companies have taken that over pretty much. Very hard to come back there. So then what would it actually do? What would the post office be for?
Yeah, so I would like to answer that by describing what the other global postal operators, as they're known globally. So the trend for declining letter post revenue, so to speak, it's not just a trend in South Africa. That is a global trend where those volumes are declining. There's been a shift towards parcel and courier, which is the second segment of the business. Then you've got financial services revenue. And of course, what's coming on board globally is digital revenue. That's another stream. So this is exactly how, when we apply it to the local scenario, we're not far off. In fact, we actually did on in terms of what the global peers are doing. So absolutely. So whilst we believe that market share has historically been lost in the parcel and courier business, for example, we believe that by automating, future-proofing the SA parcel, so to speak, we can gain market share in the courier and parcel business, whilst we expand on the financial services as well as the digital services revenues.
So, I mean, your job is to move things around, okay? And moving things around is still going to happen. People are going to want goods. And the person with the best distribution network wins that fight. I mean, there's a sort of science to this from what I understand. That's why the courier companies are so interesting to watch. So you would have to have a very good network. And yet, unfortunately, you're also closing branches. So could you not actually be putting at risk the long-term future of the post office? I understand, Anush, what your job is, I think. So I understand why you'll make this decision. It may be entirely rational now. Closing so many branches may turn out to be a bad move over the longer term.
Well, we believe that 600 branches is still, sufficient, given where the financial position of the entity is. One has to bear in mind the severe financial distress that the organization has been in. And like I said, it's not static. Once the turnaround kicks into effect, the branch network can be increased. However, you raise a very valid point. And before the private courier and parcel operators started emerging, if one casts their memories back maybe 8 to 10 years, the South African Post Office had a very bustling courier and parcel business through the Courier and Freight Group. In fact, and that's why the core infrastructure still remains. It's not like the infrastructure is decimated. The core infrastructure is there with partnerships, which is what we envisage in the plan, with modernization, automation. It's a matter of kickstarting that. So we believe that will assist in gaining market share.
Anush, thank you. Anush Ruplal is the business rescue practitioner at the SA Post Office. Your view on that, 086 000 2032, 7 minutes to 8.
SAfm, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Two major highway delays are at Gauteng to try and avoid. One is a major crash on the M1 North going into Atterbury Road. The traffic is really quite extreme. It's all the way back through the R21 and getting back pretty quickly towards Buerta Avenue. So from Buerta Avenue, making your way through to Atterbury, that's one just to try and get onto some alternative routes to avoid. There's also really heavy backlogs on the M1 North this morning. This is coming from the Winnie Mandela Drive from Four Ways up to Buccleuch. Now, it's a pedestrian that's been knocked down before you get to Buccleuch, and that also is a very heavy backlog. Cross into Durban, if you're leaving Pinetown on your way into Durban, it's sort of a double whack this morning because you've got the roadworks at the M13, N3 on-ramp, plus an earlier breakdown at Pavilion, which is being cleared, but it's just left that traffic on the M13 back to St John's Avenue Bridge. Lost load on the N2 between Queenundy and Inunda Road. That is slowing traffic both ways, the load in the right shoulder, so highly visible to both sides of the highway. And the N2 stays busy from the M7 moving through Spaghetti Junction into the roadworks. Ashburton through to Cato Ridge looking okay. A reminder of protesting causing disruption to traffic flow again between Port Shepstone and Harding. It's around the Paddock at Murchison area again, the second night in a row with that one. And then Cape Town, some load shedding in the Montague Gardens and Boortessuck areas. So the N7 trying to get off at Bosmansdam Road, heavily backed up from Voortrekker Road in Goodwin. And also the R300's a bit of a standout this morning. Very heavy pressure from Delft all the way through to the Old Paarl Road. Looks like trouble as you come off the R300 at Old Paarl and Old Oak Junction. Rob Byrne, SAfm Traffic.
SAfm is sharing the festive spirit by giving away 5,000 Rand to 10 lucky winners. To enter, SMS SAfm Festive, followed by your name and what the festive season means to you to 41391. And you could win. Tune in to SAfm throughout December, and we could be calling you. SMSs are charged at R1.50. Free SMSs, free minutes, and SMS bundles do not apply. Terms and conditions apply. Visit safm.co.za for more information. Call us on 086 000 2032.
Sasizo in Mpumalanga. Sasizo, hi. Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Yes, you're trying, Steve. It's Saziso. How are you?
I am well, Sasizo. Thanks for calling. Petro SA.
Yeah. Stephen, thank you for taking my call. Just few things that I would like us to this. I don't want questions. However, in situations like this, Steve, it's having an interest on a deal that they know anything about. For me, it will be good for you to give whoever an opportunity.
Oh, Sazizo, we're losing you there. I'm sorry. Are you still there? Sazizo? All right. I think we're going to have to leave that there. Sorry, Sazizo in Mpumalanga. You're welcome to call back. Not quite sure what happened to that line. You're with SAfm, 4 minutes now to 8.
First in the morning, SAfm Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
I know that we've now been in December for 12 days, but can you still sort of sense the excitement in the air? I mean, literally, sort of almost 2 weeks ago, there was that sense, finally December is here, the holiday is here. I think people are excited about that. I'm going away, Friday morning I'll be off. And so basically, I think the idea of just sort of enjoying ourselves at the end of quite a tough year, but it also means that we spend more money. Kabelo Tema is the Communications Liaison Officer at the Office of the Credit Ombud. Kabelo, good morning. How do we need to be careful about the money we spend at this time of year?
Oh, it's a very difficult challenge. I have to say it's quite a challenge. Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to your listeners. As I said, during this time of the year, with everything that we are doing, we are led by emotions and the excitement that is in the air. So it's quite a bit of a challenge for us to actually spend wisely during this time of the year. And we say that with the together with the Microfinance South Africa and the Credit Ombud, that it's actually time for us to get back to the point where we can say that January does not have to look gloomy when after we've had such a wonderful December, because that has been the culture for many, many, many years.
Is part of it about planning? Budget. I hate budgeting, but just literally, this is what you're going to spend over December. This is where you need to be at the end of it.
Definitely. I mean, I think that at this present moment, we all know the inevitable costs of January would be you are going back to work, kids are going back to school. So what you need to do then to best navigate January, to make sure that at least the essentials are taken care of, put aside money for those essentials. Because I know that a lot of people do struggle with budgeting. I mean, some people will tell you that who's got time in December to actually sit down and draw up a budget. I don't have time for that. But then what happens in January? That's why a lot of times we then hear people saying that January has got 90 days because it seems like it's so long. And don't forget that majority of us actually get paid earlier in December, forgetting that the salary that we do receive in December has to actually cover the costs over January as well. So when you sit down and actually draw up a budget, at least ensure that the essentials will be taken care of in January, so that you don't have that gloomy and broke January where we're eating cabbage for supper instead of actually having it as a salad.
I think the hard part, Kabelo, really is to try and actually sit down and do it. And I think people try and avoid that, really. But I mean, you can do it in half an hour, less than that? Sit down, work out where you are, where you need to be, and go from there?
I actually think so. And I think that right now it is at that point where you need to decide as an individual where you want to see yourself, and especially coming now, we're not only talking about the current festive season, but in the coming festive seasons, that do I still want to have to actually pay off my debt using my bonus, or do I actually want to spend my bonus for what it's intended for, which is for me to actually enjoy my time with my family and my friends. So it is for you as an individual to say that, as Kabelo Tema, I challenge myself and I'm going to do this for myself. And I know that by doing this for myself in future, my future self will thank me for actually doing this right now. So that 30 minutes that you are sitting and drawing up that budget, you will thank yourself for doing that in the coming January and next year, December as well.
Kabelo, someone once said, I might have read it, they said, South Africans spend money we don't have on things we don't need to impress people we don't like.
People we don't like.
It's true, eh?
It is very true. I think that a lot of times when you look at December time, people are trying to get their driver's licenses so that they can go and buy the cars that they cannot afford. And then after that, come March, already people are defaulting on their payments. And then after that, you look at this car that you thought that you absolutely loved and you start hating it because you're thinking, my goodness gracious me, I can't afford it. But I always say that when you are sitting at night and you're drawing up that budget, or you cannot put bread on the table that you're supposed to, then that's the moment that you actually, that should be your aha moment to say that, wake up, it's time for you to actually make those changes that you need to make.
Kabelo, thank you. Kabelo Teme is the Communication Liaison Officer at the Office of the Credit Ombud. Please be careful out there with your credit card. You're with SAfm leading the conversation. It's 8 o'clock. Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 38462. Now that's good news.
Independent and impartial. This is SAfm News.
Thank you, Stephen. In your top stories, Petro SA confirms deal with Russian SOE, and South Africa mourns the passing of celebrated songstress Sahara. This is SAfm News. A very good morning. I am Luyanda Maume. Petro SA has confirmed the appointment of Russia's Gazprom Bank as the preferred strategic partner for the 3.7 billion rand deal to restart the gas-to-liquids refinery in Mossel Bay. The fuel refinery was closed in 2020 due to the depletion of offshore gas feedstocks. Acting Petro SA CEO Sandile Ngamane says the resumption of operations at the refinery will restore security of supply of petroleum products following the closure of several refineries over the past couple of years, which made South Africa reliant on imports. Ngamane addressed the media in Sandton in the north of Johannesburg.
Petro SA welcomes Cabinet's decision announced this morning, which regards to support Petro SA working with Gazprom Africa to reinstate Petro SA's liquids refinery capacity, as it enables Petro SA to move forward. The optimum size for the Petro SA liquids refinery capacity has to be complementary to the existing refineries in meeting the demand of the Western Cape, Northern Cape, Eastern Cape, and to ensure that it improves the return on investment.
Judgment is expected today in the possession of drugs and illegal ammunition case against Muzisi Biya, one of the accused in the Senzo Meiwa murder case. The Tembisa Magistrates Court postponed the case on the 1st of December due to the magistrate's ill health. Sibiya was arrested on the 30th of May in 2020. At the time of his arrest, police found live ammunition in a black plastic bag. The NPA's Pindim Jonondwane says they have solid evidence.
The decision or the conviction itself is the prerogative of the court after it has considered all evidential material. So we are now in the hands of the court, but we believe that we have placed sufficient evidence as the state.
A group of concerned parents and residents is expected to picket outside the Soshangube Magistrates Court in the north of Pretoria today when the case of 3 men who allegedly sold cookies laced with dacha to learners resumes. Amukelani Nyalungu, Offense Maluleke and Katlego Matlala, whose bail application has been denied, are facing 43 counts of attempted murder. The children started experiencing nausea, stomach cramps and vomiting after consuming the cakes. 90 learners were hospitalized. Here are the views of some of the concerned parents.
They must throw in jail. They nearly kill the kids, 91 kids. They must go to jail. They're not supposed to stay here with the people. Don't want them here. They kill children with drugs.
Rot in jail. Why? Because we want to kill our kids. They mustn't come out forever and ever. You're not allowed to get a bail.
The IFP says they've noted the High Court in Pretoria's ruling that President Cyril Ramaphosa's recognition of King Misuzulu Kazolithini as Amazulu monarch is unlawful and invalid. In his ruling, Judge Norman Davis said the judgment is not about who should be king of the Amazulu. Judge Davis said the court was asked to determine whether King Misuzulu Kazolithini had been appointed as king in terms of Zulu customs. The judge said the second question was whether the president had correctly recognized the king in terms of the traditional and Khoisan Leadership Act. IFP spokesperson is Mkhuleko Hlengwa.
We have noted the judgment of the court, and it is a matter for the royal family now to deal with, and we hope that they will be able to respond to it in earnest to provide the necessary stability, and we will accept whatever outcome of that process is concerned. So for us, really, it's a matter for the royal family and His Majesty the King to see how they take it forward.
A close friend of multi-award-winning musician Zahara has expressed his shock and sadness after the passing of the songstress. The Loliwe hitmaker, whose real name is Bulelwa Mkutukana, died at a Johannesburg hospital last night. TK Goldfish says Zahara loved playing her guitar and had a good sense of humor.
If anyone knows Zahara and is very close with her, at any time, anywhere when you're with Zahara, she'd just jam. She'd fetch her guitar and she'd just jam and sing for you. So those are my memories, mostly that I remember with her. She had a sense of humor. You'd always laugh when you're around Zahara and you'd always be singing. So those are the memories I have and that I will keep with me.
And finally, the presidency of the UN Climate Summit in Dubai is preparing a further final agreement after an earlier draft was condemned for stopping short of calling for a phase-out of fossil fuels. All 198 countries at the summit must agree or there's no deal. The BBC's Justin Rowland reports.
The negotiations have continued through the night here as countries that wanted to see a more ambitious deal on fossil fuel tried to get tougher language into the text. But what has become clear is that it wasn't just a couple of oil-producing nations that had doubts about the original deal. Quite a few developing countries said they wanted more finance to help switch to clean energy and adapt to climate change. It appears there are some big bridges to build here in Dubai.
Recapping a top story, Petro SA has confirmed the appointment of Russia's Gazprom Bank as the preferred strategic partner for the 3.7 billion rand deal to restart the gas-to-liquids refinery in Morsel Bay. For SAfm News, I am Luyanda Maume. Headlines at 8:30.
Luyanda, thank you. Those are the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 38462 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out. Is balancing your income statement harder than perfecting a traditional South African potjie? Outsurance is the secret sauce to managing your finances. They're so confident that they can beat your current car insurance premium that you can ask them for 500 Rand if they're more expensive. That's a monthly saving on your current premium or 500 Rand cash. Claim free and with the same insurer for 3 years, ask for 1,500 Rand instead. SMS out to 38462 for a quote. That's out to 38462. Outsurance as a licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's apply.
A very good morning to you in your SFM Sports Headlines. Cricket action to look forward to as the Proteas. Kristen Tubbs has the World Cup in mind as he wants to make a mark when he takes on India. And we also have Scott McTominay saying toxicity at Man United is no longer an issue. Let's find out more just before 8:30.
SAfm, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very heavy on Pretoria's N1 North, a collision blocking some lanes before Atterbury Road. The traffic is heavy. It's all the way back through towards Boerta Avenue in Centurion. Just north of Boerta Avenue is where you'll see the queue, and you won't get out of that until you got past the scene. Also, Joburg Z1 running north, a pedestrian down this morning at Buccleuch Interchange, and that's why you're stuck right back through to Winnie Mandela Drive in the Four Ways area. Very heavy at both of those crash scenes today. Durban and Oslo between Queen Andy Drive and Inanda Road. It's on the southbound, but northbound backlogging as well. So both sides of the highway there really under some pressure. And Cape Town, load shedding about to wrap up in the Boortsak Montague Gardens Summer Greens area, but it's left some really heavy delays. You've got Bosmansdam Road from Boortsak all the way over the N7 to Montague Drive. You've got routes like Vryburger out of Boortsak, Edgemead Drive out of Edgemead, and the N7 from Goodwood up to Bosmansdam Road. All of those routes under some really extreme pressure. Rob Byrne, SAfm Traffic.
SAfm Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
9 after 8, good morning. You're with SAfm Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Glad you're with us this morning. Lots going on, of course. Taking your calls as well on 086 000 2032. So far, the conversation of the morning probably around Petro SA. We've also, of course, heard about the King of the Amazulu, King Msizulu Kazwelatini, that court ruling yesterday. That's a big issue this morning, actually. And I mean, you heard our expert, Professor Musa Kolu, saying, look, 50-50. Other people could now be king, recognized as kings. I think this is a big deal. You mediated conversation, the idea of a properly independent judiciary, and the idea from the judiciary that actually magistrates need to be removed from the state. They're currently under the Justice Department. The other news breaking overnight, the passing of Zahara Shame, so young at the age of just 35. And I'm sure you'll be thinking about her when you listen to some of her music through the day and thinking about your life and your memories and where you heard it for the first time. 10 after 8.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Bruce on the line from Randburg. Bruce, hi. Petro SA.
Good morning, Stephen. Stephen, I've responded and worked with lots of private sector and public sector tenders. To me, this Petro SA, let's call it allegation, the issue is not that Gazprom got the tender. The real issue should be, did Gazprom help create the tender? Did they contribute towards it? Because if they did help create the tender, then what it does is puts all the other bidders at an obvious disadvantage, because what companies do is they include parts of the tender that they know that only they can respond to. So that should be the real question. It's not that Gazprom got the tender. It could be any company. The question should be, did they help create the tender? And that undermines the principle of people responding to tenders in a free and fair environment.
So, in other words, someone who wins the game helps to set the rules.
Yes. You see, all the companies will be able to respond to the tender, and they all have common skills. But what companies do sometimes is, if they work on the tender, then when the people review it, they're going to score them higher points because they know those other companies, and that defeats the point of the tender process. That should be the real question. It doesn't matter who gets the tender, it's how they got the tender.
All right, Bruce in Randburg. Interesting point. Thank you. James in Emalachleni, Petro SA. Hi, James. Hello, James.
Good morning.
Morning, James. You're on the radio.
How are you, sir?
I'm well. Go for it.
Yeah, Stephen, I just needed to comment on this Petro SA deal. I think basically not getting into the jinx of the matter per se, but in terms of how the interview went between yourself and the COO. I seem to concur with the previous callers with regard to the arrogance. Personally, I felt that the COO was not necessarily handling this interview in a professional manner, regardless of the manner that it was framed. But I also think as well, based on the callers that called thereafter in terms of the response to this interview, basically for yourself, I think what I've observed, I'm actually a first-time caller. I don't usually call you.
No, I know. Welcome, yes.
I felt that, let me just share some thoughts. What I picked up in terms of this, based on the callers, that's somewhere against, somewhere for. But my point is that I think from your side, what I've observed is that there are some topics or engagements where you become personally involved in a manner that you're not facilitating engagement, you become emotional about it. One of the callers that called was actually making an accusation around Amabongani not taking any interest in the investigation of the rent manipulation. It was a very emotional response, but what I think from my side...
It was also a factual response, but yes. Anyway, go on.
Yeah, my point is that the only thing that I think you actually asking the right questions and all of that, and I think the one constructive feedback that I would like to give is just that in the manner that you actually... because on a day-to-day basis, you deal with very controversial people and you handle them calmly and all of that. I think the only thing that I would expect from the person of your caliber is consistency in terms of that, because you are challenged from all angles every day of the show. Yeah. Thank you.
James, thank you for your nuance, and please call again.
Thank you very much,
right. James on the line from Emalachleni, first-time caller here on SAfm. Kirk in Cape Town. Hello, Kirk.
Hi there. How are you doing?
I'm well. Go for it.
Good. I'm not a first-time caller, but I want to echo some of what your previous callers have said. Interviewing parastatals, staff and leaders is always going to be difficult for you and other interviewers, because these topics affect all of us in our daily lives.
Yeah.
And everybody gets emotional about these issues. What I do notice, though, is, and I hope it's just my suspicion, and I hope that I'm wrong.
Sure.
But there seems to almost be from some of the people who you interview and other people interview, there seems to become almost a racial element to the follow-up calls or the responses to the interviews, where we seem to be. I picked up a trend that there seems to be a racial divide on who's being interviewed and who's doing the interviewing. I hope I'm wrong, but in your interview today regarding the Gazprom deal, the fact that 19 of the 20 were excluded, I do agree with what one of the previous callers, that there does appear to be some manipulation in the tender process. And of course, it is your responsibility, like Amma Bongani and every other journalist's responsibility, and me as a citizen and a taxpayer, to get to the bottom of these deals. And of course, it's not easy because it's always so murky and there's always so much subterfuge. But we are so cynical, and part of our cynicism is that we've been let down by so many other government departments. And why all of a sudden would this be the first deal that is without any illegal intervention? That's what makes us skeptical.
Kirk, I'm not going to respond directly to what you suggest because I'm not sure. I don't know if you're right or not about your suspicion. I think there are ways I could argue against you, but let me just say one thing, if you don't mind, which is that one of the utter joys of this job is that, and I don't think we say this enough, is that SAfm has probably the most diverse English language radio audience in the world. And that is what makes it so interesting. Do you know what I mean? Is that we all come at things from a different place. And that, for me, is important.
I absolutely agree with you. And look, all of our starting points determine how we respond to situations. Yes. And there are so many callers. I'm a person of color, right? So there are so many callers who call into the station, and I'm going to mention him by name, and I hope he's not offended. But Mikey Newlands, for example.
I knew you were going to say him, yes.
Yeah, is a common caller. And there are so many times I agree with him, and so many times I disagree with him with some frequentness. But I try not to measure my assessment of what he's saying by the fact that he sounds or appears to be a white male.
Yeah.
A white middle-aged male. I try not to be. I try to be objective. And all I'm saying is I hope that all callers will put the race issue aside and try to be objective. It doesn't always work because our emotions are linked to our past, and we are so racially divided, maybe now more so than ever, I still feel, in a lot of respects. So that's where my suspicion is based on. And I hope I'm wrong.
No, Kirk, thank you. Also, I really appreciate the nuance. I'm a big fan of nuance. Kirk in Cape Town, thank you. Temba and Mthatha, I've got a minute. Hi, good morning.
Yes, good morning, Steve.
I
want to differ with the other colleagues. Yeah, the most objective facilitator in discussions.
Well, Temba, thank
even the discussion on petrol SAA, you have handled very well. Congratulations, Steve.
Thank you, Temba. That's very kind. On the line from Mthatha. Really appreciate it. 18 minutes after 8. Lots of different directions, as I say, for this discussion and all of our other discussions to go in.
Stephen Grootes on SAfm.
So, there's been lots of conversations around the post office, and news today that the post office will no longer actually pay social grants, will no longer do cash payments of social grants. That's from next year, and this is all to do with the way the Post Bank is operating. Dr. Bongani Diako is the spokesperson for the Post Bank. Dr. Diako, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to the listeners at home.
This process starts in January. It'll be over 3 months. Why are you phasing out the cash withdrawal of grants?
So we're phasing it out, Stephen, so that it's not something that we're pulling the plug instant on, and we can gradually orientate the people we are moving to the national payment systems to the new service points.
And is that going to be easier for people then, or is it going to be harder?
We don't anticipate it will be harder, Stephen, because the NPS channels that involve the ATMs and the retailers have always been part of the grants payments value chain. What we are doing now is migrating about 2% of people that have always been collecting their money at the post office or at the physical cash pay points where a cash van will drive into a location and people queue to collect money. So we are just moving them to say, hang on, we want to improve the quality of your service. Can you then use the other available channels instead of these two channels that are not really dependable?
How many people are actually getting their social grant in this way every month?
So across the branches, Stephen, we've got 161,419 people throughout the country. And at the CPPs, it's 136,979. So 136,979 across the country. So more or less around 300,000 people that we are moving to collect their money via the national payment points.
And you're phasing it out slowly, so you've got 3 months to do it. Are people going to be told that this is happening in each case?
We've already started telling them. In December, for an example, when we were making the payments at the branches and the CPPs, the staff were telling people directly as they were paying them, because they have to be physically there to collect the money, that we are phasing out and providing them the timelines. We're leveraging of the national media and community media to really get people socialized to the changes.
Dr. Bongani Diako, thank you very much indeed. Spokesperson for the Post Bank, really do appreciate the time this morning.
SAfm. Prime time all day long.
Time now for the science of life, and one of the stories that's emerged over the last couple of days is that hackers have been trying to get into the lottery website to try and find the identities of people who've won the lottery. As you know, when you win the lottery, you can decide whether or not your name is published. It's never happened to me, but I'm told that you can decide if your name is published. What they were trying to do is to get to the winners who had preferred their names not to be published. But there are other things going on around the National Lottery at the moment. Jan Vermeulen's the editor at mybroadband.co.za. Jan, good morning.
Good morning.
I would like to think it's quite difficult to hack into someone's internal website, and yet the evidence from around the world shows that for some people it's quite easy.
Indeed, and one hopes that this kind of data, the data on who the winners are who prefer to keep their names private, are not in fact on a public server, that they're on a private server somewhere inside the company, and you can't just access it by hacking into Ituba or the National Lottery Commission's public-facing websites.
So when you say a private server, would that be like an air-gapped computer?
Nothing. It doesn't even have to be that fancy. It can just be a server that is not accessible via the internet. So it's on your internal corporate network, and the only way to get at that server is to be inside your network. And so if you want to get in remotely to that data for whatever reason, then you have to go through a VPN. But usually, to get at that data, you have to go into the office. So it doesn't have to be quite as severe as air gaps. There are other ways to secure data that's sensitive but not necessarily top secret.
Okay, there must be a huge business in keeping data secure, because there's a huge business in hacking at the moment.
Yes, yes. The simple answer to that is yes. The information security industry is certainly booming, but I am worried that South Africa is not taking information security for the country as seriously as we're seeing elsewhere in the world.
So then, what I would imagine is that if someone wanted, and the claim made by the National Lottery, by the current operator, by Ituba, is that this is sort of being done for commercial gain. There are various reasons as to why that may or may not be. But how would someone who's a competitor, in this case, it's the lottery, but maybe it's a competitor for someone's, I don't know, bus business, or maybe their water bottle business, or whatever it is. How would a competitor get someone to go and hack into the internal files of a competitor? Would they literally? Is there a dark web? Is there a marketplace for this? Are there people you can contract to actually do your hacking for you?
Yes, absolutely. And I don't even think you need to go into the dark web is obviously an obvious place to go looking for services like this, but I don't even think you need to go scratching that deeply. I'm pretty sure there are hackers offering their services, in relatively safe jurisdictions, or from relatively safe jurisdictions, right on the clear web. You'll be able to just use your regular browser and go there if you want. But I am suspicious about the claim, because if the allegations, these allegations can be proved, it will be, it's criminal. Like the competitors to Ituba, if they are indeed doing this and it's proven that they are doing this, that's a criminal offense.
Proving it, always very difficult. You actually have to catch people doing it. And from what I can see, certainly in South Africa, very few people have actually been arrested, never mind convicted, for hacking.
Yes, and certainly the way things like the Gupta leaks have gone doesn't inspire confidence, because, you would need something Gupta leaks level. You would need emails or something to that effect tying these competitors to the alleged hacking of Ituba's service. So some kind of documentary evidence to show intent and execution, and then you'd be able to tie them to the crime.
So it boils down to the same thing. All companies, all institutions, everyone everywhere is going to have to spend a lot more money on cybersecurity. And even if they do, there's no certainty.
Yes, and so part of the spend on cybersecurity that needs to happen is on recovery. So if you are hacked, if your customer's data is compromised, what do you do in response to that? And so that is part of a good cyber defense plan.
Jan Vermeulen, thank you very much indeed. Jan Vermeulen is the editor at mybroadband.co.za. Well, it just reminds you, again, how important it is to keep your information safe in all sorts of different ways. Pen and paper still works. 27 minutes after 8.
This is SAfm Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. The Tristan Stubbs.
Yes, the Proteas batter. He's got his mind at the 2024 ICC T20 World Cup that's taking place in the Caribbean and in the US, saying he wants to grab every opportunity that comes his way. The 23-year-old middle order batter will again be in line to take on India in the second of 3 2020 internationals at St. George's Park in Gqeberha today from 5 p.m. Both sides were frustrated as their trip to Durban for the first clash was rained out without a ball being bowled, and will get valuable game time with so little international T20 cricket on the horizon for the Proteas for the next 6 months. Soccer now, former Bafana international Sibusiso Zuma believes that the national team can make an impact at next month's Africa Cup of Nations in Ivory Coast after having qualified. Zuma also believes that Bafana can qualify for the 2026 FIFA World Cup in the USA, Mexico and Canada. He played for the national team at the 2002 FIFA World Cup in Korea and Japan.
It's open for everyone. Nigeria is not playing well, so let's see. I think our boys need to be, motivated. They need to understand it's the World Cup, man, is huge. You want to see them there.
Elsewhere, manager Erik ten Hag says Manchester United can beat any opponent, as they'll need to beat Bayern Munich to reach the Champions League last 16. United must win tonight's game and hope Copenhagen draw with Galatasaray in order to progress from Group A. The problem for ten Hag's United is inconsistent performances so far.
The game against Chelsea, the game against Everton, even the game against Galatasaray. And so I know this team can perform really high levels, and that's not that we did it 3 months ago. No, we did it last week, and so I know we can do it. And when we have the right mood, we have the right spirit, starts with the right attitude. If everyone is ready for it, we are able to do it.
While at the same time, it has been toxic times at Manchester United under former manager, but the players are firmly behind Eric Ten Hag. This is according to midfielder Scott McTominay. Now, over the weekend, they had a loss that was 3-0 to Bournemouth and their 11th defeat in 23 games in all competitions. Here's Scott McTominay.
It's the players' responsibility, first and foremost. Players know that as well. We've had many amazing players over the time, and I feel like now we're at a stage where we've got big characters in the dressing room, where it's not just a case of like some of the other managers where it's been a little bit toxic at times. The boys are firmly behind the manager, and that's the be all and end all. I've said that in many other interviews, and that's the way it will remain to stay. We've got amazing coaching staff as well.
And that's a wrap of your sport on Sunrise. We'll bring you more on SAfm at around 12:30. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. The independence of the judiciary and magistrates. That's next year with SAfm leading the conversation Tuesday morning 8:30.
Thank you, Stephen. In your headlines, Gold One Mine says disciplinary action will be taken against mine workers found guilty of misconduct. This comes after miners staged a sit-in for several days in protest of the dismissal of 50 workers following a labour dispute in October. Petro SA has confirmed the appointment of Russia's Gazprom Bank as preferred strategic partner for the 3.7 billion rand deal to restart the gas-to-liquids refinery in Mossel Bay. The fuel refinery was closed in 2020 due to the depletion of offshore gas feedstocks. And U.S. State Department says Israel can do more to protect Palestinian lives in Gaza. Department spokesperson Bethaniel Tech says clear instructions were needed to allow people to move away from the conflict, though he said Hamas had responsibility to protect civilians. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAfm, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
The two routes around Gauteng to avoid the N1 North up to Buccleuch. A pedestrian's been knocked down this morning. It's been there a while, possibly fatal, I would think. It's a very heavy queue that extends from Winnie Mandela Drive in four ways. From there, you sit in heavy traffic all the way through to Buccleuch. So if you're coming up from Soweto, Rudaport, Randburg, off-ramp at Malabongwe, off-ramp at Winnie Mandela, and just hit some alternative routes. Local routes are doing okay, but that highway really badly backed up, as is the N1 North in Pretoria. A collision, a bad one, before Atterbury Road, and that traffic's all the way back almost to Boerta Avenue. You can come on at Atterbury, that's fine if you want to go north, but if you're sort of south of that, obviously off-ramp Boerta Avenue, R21, and again hit those relatively open local routes. Now, driving into Durban, the N3 under pressure again. We had a breakdown at Pavilion Mall. It cleared, but there's another one now, so also some roadworks there. So coming from Pinetown, sit on the M13 onto Paradise Valley due to the roadworks, and then as you pick up the N3, you sit down towards Pavilion Mall due to that breakdown. Lost load between Inanda Road and Queen Nandi Drive is slowing things up both directions, particularly heavy on the southbound, but northbound also getting a whack. Cape Town, Bosmansdam Road stays really heavy out of Edgemead through towards Montague Drive after some earlier load shedding. It is causing big delays on Vryburger from Boertesak from Edgemead Drive up towards Bosmansdam, and queues on the N7 North approaching that off-ramp as well. Rob Byrne, SAfm Traffic.
Keeping up with your TV license balance inquiries is now simpler than ever. No more waiting in queues. No more phone calls. Just SMS your ID or TV license account number to 44210 and secure your legal viewing fast and simple. Standard SMS rates will be charged. Terms and conditions apply. TV licenses. Pay yours. Make a difference. The argument of who will lift the Carling Knockout Cup will be concluded by the referee's final whistle. Stellenbosch FC and TS Galaxy FC tackles each other for the big prize at the Moses Mabhida Stadium. Who will prevail eThekwini? Stellies or the Rockets? Catch the Carling Knockout Cup final between Stellenbosch FC and TS Galaxy FC on Saturday, 16th December at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. # We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Mediate
Educated conversation on SAfm.
27 minutes to 9 this Tuesday morning. Time for your mediated conversation this morning. Last week at a judges' conference, the Chief Justice Raymond Zondo said he would meet with President Cyril Ramaphosa this week to discuss issues around the independence of the judiciary. In particular, Judge Zondo says magistrates are not fully independent because they are technically employed by the Justice Ministry. In other words, magistrates, as I understand it, do not come under the office of the Chief Justice as High Court judges do. At the same time, Zondo says, in fact, the judiciary is not fully independent, despite plans going back many years to finish the process of making judges and the entire judiciary completely independent of the executive. You can imagine how contentious they could be, particularly at a time when there are many contentious issues in government. At the same time, Zondo saying last week that judges are often being attacked in public and cannot defend themselves in public, which means that there may need to be some mechanism to protect them. So then, what changes do we need to make? How do we make them? And how should all of this work? This is your mediated conversation this morning. Firstly, you'll hear from Magistrate Neelan Karakan, the President of the Judicial Officers Association of SA, representing, as I understand it, primarily magistrates. Then, what kind of system should we have? Does it matter that we have the system we do now? Professor Umpametse Sabanda is a professor of law at the University of Limpopo and in fact a dean there. And then the view from CASAC. Dan Mofora is a senior researcher for the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution. We start then with Magistrate Neelan Karakan. Magistrate Karakan, good morning to you and thank you for your time this morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to your listeners.
You say you want a singularly effective and independent judiciary. What do you mean? What do you believe needs to change?
Stephen, currently it's only the High Court judges that are falling within the office of the Chief Justice, and the administration of the judiciary is currently controlled by the Department of Justice, and that's another arm of government. The idea is to bring at least the lower court judiciary, which is currently predominantly under the Department of Justice. We need to be brought under the office of the Chief Justice, and that's quite important in creating a single judiciary.
Is there a constitutional reason to do this? Was this always supposed to happen and never did, or has the issue just never come up?
Stephen, this was something that was always supposed to happen. It's been more than a decade that the ministry was supposed to actually fast-track this whole process of unifying the judiciary. And for some reason, there's no real will to implement. At the Judges' Conference, the 3-day conference that was recently held, those were one of the resolutions that were taken, that this needs to be fast-tracked. And currently, the judiciary is speaking with one voice. It was a watershed conference in that the judiciary was able to sit under one roof, all levels of judicial officers, from district court magistrates, regional court magistrates, to high court judges. And that has never happened before. It cannot be that when we refer to the judiciary, we are referring purely to the high court. And when we look at the lower court, there's largely a reference to the magistracy. And we cannot have an institution of the judiciary and the magistracy as being almost two separate entities. It's very important when we deal with three arms of government. The judiciary needs to be brought under one umbrella, and we must fall under the office of the Chief Justice, with the Chief Justice being our head. Having the Ministry of Justice being in control over our administration and court processes just doesn't make sense. It actually interferes with our independence. And when we talk about capture, really, we cannot have a situation where one arm of government is controlling another arm of government administratively. It really affects our independence.
Is there any evidence that the setup as it currently is has affected the rulings and decisions that magistrates make? I mean, that's the nub of the issue, isn't it?
Well, not really. It hasn't really affected decision-making within the judiciary, whether judges' judgments or whether you're referring to magistrates' court judgments. Remember, we already have a large degree of independence through the Judicial Service Commission, and we also have the Magistrates Commission, which regulates us. And we also have the South African Judicial Education Institute, which is an independent body that's responsible for the training of our magistrates and of our judges. So when it comes to our independence and our ability to give our decisions independently, that hasn't really been affected. But when it comes to efficiency, taking the judiciary or the lower courts away from the Department of Justice will most definitely increase efficiency, because we will be in a position to ensure that our courts are sufficiently capacitated, whether it's interpreters, whether it's stenographers, and admin staff generally. Right now, we fall under the administration falls within the Director General and under the Department of Justice. And we basically don't have direct control over efficiency. We have to always be almost hat in hand referring to the Department of Justice for any support service that we might need. And that's clearly problematic because we don't have direct control.
Is there anything the Justice Department or government gains from keeping this financial control, this control of administration? Is there any reason why they would want to keep things as they are?
I don't want to really speculate in that regard, but clearly it's a substantial component. And the movement from the Department of Justice, to my mind, should not be a difficult issue. The infrastructure is already there. It's all about the reporting process. When you deal with the court manager and the people that are overall in control of the administration, those individuals and role players must report through the Judge President's office and to the Chief Justice's office. It cannot be that they are reporting to the ministry, because that really interferes with our independence. We are unable to effectively really deal with the issues that we face every day.
Magistrate Karakan, I mean, you said at the beginning last week's conference was historic. It was the first time everyone in the judiciary was under one roof. And then there were these quite strong statements by the Chief Justice. Do you believe government will actually go ahead and make these changes now? The comments attributed to the Chief Justice suggested the only way the judiciary could do it would actually be to litigate, which is just too complex for my mind to even imagine. But, I mean, do you think that it would require pressure to make government actually move in this direction?
Absolutely, Stephen. Litigation should never be really an option for the judiciary. Remember, we are presiding over these types of matters, and the High Court judges will eventually preside. So it's like it's a bit of an anomaly. It's really problematic because the judiciary should not be placed in a position where they have to exercise their rights through the courts, because we are actually sitting there. We expect the Department of Justice to implement their mandate, because they are obliged to have incrementally supported and fast-tracked the implementation of a single judiciary. And it was always envisaged that the lower court judiciary was going to fall within the office of the Chief Justice. But for the last 10 years, there has been zero movement in terms of legislation and whatever needs to be done to bring us under that umbrella. And when we talk about a single judiciary, we are talking about lots of things. We are talking about legislative changes when it comes to the Superior Courts Act and also the lower courts. We want to create a single Courts Act, and we want to create a single set of rules that will govern the High Court and the Magistrates Court. Currently, we are disjointed because we have the Magistrates Court rules. We deal with similar types of issues, whether it's summary judgment here and summary judgment in the High Court, but specifically, we are referring to different rule numbers. It's really a duplication, and those types of things really need to be fast-tracked in order to create a proper, effective single judiciary.
Magistrate, thank you. Magistrate Nilan Karakan is the president of the Judicial Officers Association, representing primarily magistrates. You're with SAfm 17 minutes to 9. Your mediated conversation around the judiciary and complete independence for the judiciary continues. Professor Mpumetse Sabanda is a professor at the University of Limpopo. In fact, I should say a dean, I think it is. Professor Sabanda, good morning, and thank you for your time.
Good morning to other panel members.
We've heard there Magistrate Karakan making the point that magistrates' courts and high courts have different rules. Does that matter? Do we need to make a change?
It is perhaps strange that after the so-called Vision 2000, that was envisaged to help us create a single judiciary. up to this stage, as Maxine said, nothing has moved. And besides that, I think I can take it further to say the current situation or arrangement, it borders along the line of unconstitutionality, in my view, because magistrates are the judiciary in a normal society. And when you look at your section 165 of the Constitution, it says that the Chief Justice is the head of the judiciary with the responsibility to exercise over the establishment and monitoring of norms and standards for the judicial functions of all courts. So are we then saying magistrates are not courts in terms of the Constitution? Why are we singling them out of the office of the Chief Justice? It is high time that this really independence must be given back to all judiciary, including magistrates.
So I understand that people in the judiciary will find this very important. The question for most ordinary people would be, will it affect the speed of cases? Will it lead to better justice? Will it lead to a more efficient system for them, a bit more efficient system of justice?
You know, if you are in hospital, you have a specialist doctor to run the hospital normally, and then why not have the Chief Justice, who's also a member of the judicially trained, to help administer, the magistrates or other branches of the judiciary as the courts. And in my view, it will further improve at the current good administration that is happening in the magistrates by the magistrates itself. Of course, there are problems here and there, but then I think it will also boost even the morale and even the professional outlook of our courts if we have a single judiciary in that particular sense.
So it may be the right thing to do. Government's got a lot of things on its plate right now. Do you believe the Justice Department is going to do it, or will there be resistance?
I think the Justice Department will still continue to drag its feet. And I believe if the Chief Justice that now perhaps some kind of a pressure must be brought to bear on the Department of Justice. I mean, look, when you talk about independence, it should be independence both as institutions and as individuals. But an institution whereby the Minister of Justice is responsible for the appointment of the magistrate, of course, on advisement by the Magistrate Commission, responsible for the Department of Justice, responsible for administration of the magistracy, heads dealing with the court and judicial matters, and also Department of Public Works. On the other hand, I think this important division of our judiciary is basically pull apart different directions.
Within all of this, there's actually a debate at the moment around whether how the Judicial Service Commission, which recommends judges for appointment, manages itself and makes those decisions. And we've seen from time to time complaints around people who become appointed magistrates or retained as magistrates by the Magistrates Commission. Do we need to change the appointment process? If we're changing the whole thing and we needed to change that, would this be a good moment?
I think let's do a complete once-off overhaul of all the issues that are basically the dark spot of our judiciary. The first being both the composition of both the Judicial Service Commission and also the Magistrate Commission, because you do have quite a lot of political appointees in them. And that is another factor that will always really affect the functioning of these two institutions. But in particular, I would also go an extra mile to say, across the whole of Southern African region, the constitutions are very silent on the issue of political parties as members of these judiciary commissions, except in my view, when you look at the Constitution of Tanzania, it is very explicit to say that you shall never qualify to be appointed as a member of the commission if you are a member of parliament or a holder of an office prescribed as such, almost as a member of parliament by the government. So I think that's a way to go.
The other issue that the the Chief Justice Raymond Zondo spoke about last week is a tax on judges. So politicians, sometimes ordinary people, we've seen the leader of a political party actually attacking the magistrate who was hearing a case against him. We've seen all of these comments. Judges say they can't protect themselves, and I think in a way they must be right. It would probably be wrong for them to get, to step into the court of public opinion. Why do you think so many people are attacking judges and magistrates in this case? What's changed in our society that's leading to that?
I think that there's some kind of desperation of seeing a judiciary outcome sometimes really that favor a particular way or the way certain things must be done, whether their texts are justified or the capture perceived or real. It is something that the judges or the judiciary must live with. And so far, I think our judiciary has been resilient, against this kind of attacks. But then, Stephen, let's look at the feeder of the judiciary. For instance, if you are going to have about 170 attorneys suspended or be struck off the roll for unscrupulous acts against the RFA, that becomes a problem. Because if some of those are going to ascend to the bench at a magistrate or the higher court, so what you have, you are going to end up always having people doubting the good work that is being done by members of or judicial officers.
Is there a risk that over time there will be no legitimacy for the judiciary? People just won't respect them anymore, and then we have no one to resolve disputes in society?
You said it better.
Professor Mpumetse Sibanda, thank you very much indeed. A Dean at the University of Limpopo, Law Professor there. In a moment, Dan Mafora, Senior Researcher at the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution. You with SAfm, your mediated conversation will continue 10 minutes to 9.
SAfm, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
And in the last 20 minutes or so, a couple of big crashes around Gauteng have been cleared up. The N1 North at Atterbury, that scene is now out of the way. That big backlog from Boort Avenue's basically largely made its way through. And the pedestrian collision at Beclue Interchange on the N1 North has also been cleared. The problem is the traffic that was backlogged to four-way stays heavy because it's now a broken down vehicle just by Rivonia. So that traffic that was heavily backed into the crash scene just started to move, but now being held through William up towards that Rivonia obstruction. Also a breakdown on the N12 and R24 routes coming in from the east towards Galuli. So both of those routes into Joburg under pressure. Durban, lost load, N2 south after Queen Nandi Drive. That remains pretty sluggish as you head towards Inanda Road. And now we've got a crash scene near Pavilion Mall. It's all been happening there this morning. A couple of broken down trucks earlier and now a collision scene plus some roadworks. So if you're coming out of Pinetown, it's heavy on the M13 into the roadworks at Paradise Valley and then you queue down towards Pavilion Mall into that crash scene. Kept out a lot of pressure still around the Edgemead, Boortesuk and Summer Gardens area after some load shedding earlier this morning. Bosmansdam Road towards Montague Drive is heavy. Edgemead Drive, long queues out towards Bosmansdam. N7 North is queuing to get there. And the N1 inbound, you'll queue. You sit on those off-ramps from the N1 highway onto that N7 North. Roadworks on Marine Drive at Woodbridge Island causing delays. And then Marine Drive queues through Pardon Island into the busy N1 for a turn into city centre. Rob Byrne, SAfm Traffic.
Mediated conversation on SAfm.
Continue your mediated conversation at 9 minutes to 9 around the independence of the judiciary and the attacks that people make against judges. Dan Mofara is the Senior Researcher at the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution. Dan, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Morning, Stephen. Thank you so much for having me.
So, obviously, to hear from the magistracy and to hear from Professor Sibanda, there seems to be a strong case to make big changes. Is this the right moment to make big changes for magistrates, or should we maybe wait for a better moment? And do I need to remind you there's an election coming next year and no one wants to do anything before then?
Well, Stephen, this thing has been going on since the dawn of democracy, right? This conversation has a very long history stretching back to the 2000s, the early 2000s, and very little has happened. And we heard last week from from Chief Justice Zondo that even during the tenure of Chief Justice Mogoeng, no progress was made to kind of move towards a judiciary-led model of judicial administration. And so if this is not the right moment, I don't know when the right moment would be, but certainly it is long overdue.
The other issue that's been coming up is the attacks that we see on judges. And I know some people will claim that judges or magistrates are responsible for the attacks that they actually receive. People last week suggested that actually judges can't really do anything to defend themselves from these public attacks. Is there anything they should do to stop these attacks from happening in the first place? Or are in fact the attacks the result of something else?
Look, I think the attacks are absolutely the results of something else. I don't think there's anything that judges can do to shield themselves from such attacks. And these attacks are not new. They have become quite frequent, which is concerning. But they're not new. They're not something that hasn't happened before. And I think the Chief Justice was absolutely not even the Chief Justice, the Judge President, Justice Dustin Number was.
Yeah.
Yes, was absolutely correct last week when he said the profession is not doing enough to defend judges because that is the role of an independent legal profession. They're supposed to guarantee the integrity and the independence of the judiciary. And so when the judiciary comes under fire, the organized profession needs to come out and say, no, this is not how you are supposed to do things because ultimately, and this is the point that you made with the professor, that has an impact on their legitimacy. That has an impact on their integrity. And we can't have judges responding publicly and getting involved in public spats because that is also not a good look. And so I don't think that there's anything that judges are doing that warrants these kinds of attacks. But I also don't think that they can do anything. I think that the profession should step up and defend judges.
By the profession, do you mean lawyers?
I mean lawyers. I mean the advocates. I mean the attorneys. Everyone who is involved in the administration of justice and has kind of organized themselves according to professional affiliations, I think should come out in defense of judges.
It seems to me there are actually going to be more and more attacks like this, and for various reasons. If the judiciary were to lose legitimacy, I mean, what happens? If we don't have people who can resolve disputes, that basically means that people fight each other rather than actually go to court. So people will almost perhaps use physical violence rather than go to court and argue.
Absolutely. That is the complete collapse of the rule of law. You'll see more vigilantism. You'll see more self-help. You'll see, people just taking the law into their own hands. It's a completely lawless society if judges are not able to command that moral authority to order people to resolve disputes and have those decisions implemented by the executive, by the police, by the sheriffs, and all of these other officials whose job it is to carry out the orders of courts. That is why legitimacy is so important, and it's so difficult because to maintain because it's intangible, right? And it's very fragile and can easily be destroyed. And that is why it's so important that we shield as best as we can judges from the kinds of attacks that we have been seeing.
There are going to be more conversations now, I suspect, around how to protect judges or not, how to appoint judges, and the institutional arrangements we should have for judges and magistrates. Are there examples we should follow? Are there some examples maybe we should avoid? I'll give you an example of one I think we should avoid. I think we should avoid the way the United States appoints Supreme Court judges. But do you think there are other examples of better institutional frameworks that we can use, that we can point to and say, let's learn from that?
So surprisingly, the U.S. actually has a really good model of judicial administration where the judges are in charge of their own budget, are in charge of operational issues in their courts, and so far as institutional arrangements are concerned for the functioning of the judiciary, the U.S. is a good example to look at. On the question of appointments, I think a serious conversation will need to be had about the JSC, about its current composition, and about whether or not it is actually fit for purpose. And if we are moving to an institution or a one judiciary model where the magistracy also falls under the control of the Chief Justice, then we will need to streamline the appointments process, and that will necessitate a complete overhaul of the JSC. And I think, there are very difficult conversations that will need to be had about who gets to sit on the JSC, who doesn't get to sit, taking into account the performance of the JSC that we have seen over the last 30 years.
Dan Mofora, thank you very much indeed. Really do appreciate the time. Dan Mofora is a senior researcher for the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution. My thanks also to Professor Mpumetse Sibanda, professor at the University of Limpopo, a dean there in the law faculty. And starting us off today in your mediated conversation, the magistrate Nilan Karakan, the president of the Judicial Officers Association of South Africa. That mediated conversation, as always, available for you as a podcast in a few moments.
Beyond the Headline on SAfm.
When you joined the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro and became mayor at the Metro, these were some of the problems that you also found there. What was your experience like? What did you find?
In the last 18 or 19 months that I've been with Action SA, I've been traveling the length and breadth of this province, everywhere. It is absolutely rampant. So some of the notorious departments are, for example, the Department of Refuse Removal. And what you have happening there is malicious sabotage of vehicles. So vehicle tires are burst, and then the municipal vehicle can't operate, so then they have to go out to tender to do the refuse removal.
Ethel Trollip is the former mayor of the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro and also now chairperson, of course, of Action SA in the Eastern Cape.
Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampier. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m. Stephen Grootes on SAfm.
That's it from us. Kathy is next. We will see you tomorrow from Mdu, Stanza, Mpo. Myself, look after yourself. You're with SAfm, leading the conversation. It's 9 o'clock.
Independent and impartial. This is SAfm News.
Thank you, Stephen. In your top stories, Goldwine Mine promises action following latest incident, and South Africans react with sadness to Sahara's passing. This is SAfm News. A very good morning. I am Luyanda Maume. Goldwine Mine says disciplinary action will be taken against mine workers found guilty of misconduct. This comes after miners staged a sit-in for several days in protest of dismissal of 50 workers following a labor dispute in October. The company has also described last week's events as a hostage situation, as some of the workers were forced to take part in the sit-in and were assaulted while underground. Goldwine Mine's head of legal, Ziad Hassam, says staging a sit-in will not change their approach to dealing with the misconduct in terms of their code of conduct.
This has become something of a worrying trend within the sector in the last few months. And between ourselves, the NUM, AMCU, as well as the DMR, we need to find lasting solutions to make sure that this doesn't become the norm every time an employee or a group of employees are dissatisfied with something that happens at a management level.
The EFF's legal team has insisted that National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula's version of her report should be tested by asking her to appear before the hearing of EFF MPs. The Powers and Privileges Committee has rejected the EFF's legal team's request for a postponement of the hearings pending the outcome of Part B of their court application. The committee has been conducting the hearing involving 3 EFF MPs who were removed during President Cyril Ramaphosa's oral reply session in August last year. The EFF members who kept interjecting were physically removed from the Good Hope chamber during a hybrid sitting. EFF legal representative is Advocate Mfesane Kasiboto.
She has given her views and her report. We want to challenge her views. That's what we're saying. We're not saying, come tell us what happened. We know what she says happened as she sees it. We want to test that. And I'll give you a practical example of what it is that I'm getting at, Speaker. One of the members of parliament that I represent is accused of having said something unparliamentary. It doesn't appear anywhere in her report, nowhere in the Hansard, nowhere in the video, what exactly it is that she said. She, at that hearing, invited the Speaker to tell her what she said. The Speaker said, well, I'll have reference to the Hansard and revert. She has not done so. So all we simply want, for example, is for her to tell us what the member said. It appears nowhere in the report.
Petro SA has confirmed the